They've come from the bowels of hell.
The Dana Gould Hour.
Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet.
I fought a dog that killed the calf that ate the canary. What is truth?
And once again, welcome back.
Hello, and welcome to Season 15 of the Dana Gould Hour Podcast. Never an hour, but always a podcast. Fasten your enthusiasm harnesses. We're blasting off again. Mark Malkoff has a new book entitled Love, Johnny Carson, One Obsessive Fan's Journey to Find the Genius Behind the Legend. Johnny Carson is so larger than life now that it's important to sometimes take a step back and appreciate what he actually accomplished. Unlike today, when there are 8,000 channels and 3 network late-night talk shows, Johnny Carson hosted The Tonight Show when there were around 10 channels available to you on television and one network late-night talk show, which he hosted for 30 years. He interviewed over 25,000 guests. He navigated the American cultural conversation from President Kennedy through President Clinton. Mark's book covers the debuts of then unknown comedians who are now household names. He talks about Johnny's feuds. Did you know that there were periods of time when William Shatner and Orson Welles were banned from The Tonight Show? It talks a lot about the early days in New York. I mean, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show had a whole other life in New York, it's like a whole other career this guy had that people don't really know much about. What I like about the book is it's really affectionate. It's honest without being exploitive. It dishes a lot of dirt, but it's never bitchy. I can't recommend it enough. It's a fast, easy read. It's great. Love, Johnny Carson, One Obsessive Fan's Journey to Find the Genius Behind the Legend. Mark Malkoff, right here, in the human flesh. Our second interview is with 2 dudes who have written extensively about 2 films from a very special time in American cinema going. You know, back in the 70s, you see, before cable and before VHS tapes, never mind DVDs or streaming, if you wanted to see a movie in the 70s, you had to either wait and catch it on television, or if you wanted to see it uncut, you had to find it playing in a movie theater, and that's it. And because of this, more people went to more movies more often. And this was before multiplexes. Movie theaters were a lot more random. You didn't have 16 screens in one building. You had 16 different movie theaters scattered around the town. John Gaspar has written a book about a very strange event at one such theater in one of my favorite cities in the goddamn world, and now yours too, the capital of America, Minneapolis, Minnesota. His book is called Held Over, Harold and Maude at the Westgate Theater, and it tells the story of Hal Ashby's 1971 black comedy, Harold and Maude, that stars Ruth Gordon and Bud Cort, that ran for 2 years at this little neighborhood theater in the Minneapolis suburb of Edina, the Westgate Theater. The film ran for so long that the neighbors protested, demanding a new movie. It's a really entertaining book. It's full of photos, and it's a little time machine, one of my favorite things, about what moviegoing was like in America before the multiplexes took over. And John and I are joined by Ari Khan. Ari is the archivist of the Swan Archives, which I can best describe as a labyrinthine database covering all things pertaining to 1974's Brian De Palma cult classic, Phantom of the Paradise. Imagine the last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. If all of those boxes were full of information about Phantom of the Paradise, that would be the Swan Archives. Now, you might be saying that you don't know a lot about Phantom of the Paradise. No problem. You will by the time we get there. True Tales from Weirdsville is going to take us on a deep dive into that mid-70s glam rock Faustian gem, Phantom of the Paradise. As for me, if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area on January 30th, It's Hanging with Dr. Z live at Cobb's Comedy Club in San Francisco as part of SF Sketchfest. Join the good doctor with his guests Dave Foley, Chuck Bryant from the Stuff You Should Know podcast, L. Ron Hubbard, author of Battlefield Earth and the founder of Scientology, which is a religion, I guess, and Janet Varney. They all join Dr. Z, Rusty Claudine, and the whole gang Friday, January 30th at Cobb's Comedy Club. Brought to you by SF Sketchfest. For ticket links, go to the live appearances page at danagould.com. And lastly, hang on. Hot cup of coffee. Lastly, thank God, this program is brought to you by you. Although you may hear a couple of spot ads here and there, the show has always relied on its listeners for support, and we never fail to appreciate you. And so, if you are not one already, please consider becoming a Dana Gould Hour Sky Cadet. Go to danagould.com and sign up for our Patreon. $5 a month, and you get some extra audio content, some video content, and some other junk. We don't have graduated levels. For $5 a month, you get some stuff. I'm not going to come to your house for $7.50 every 3 weeks and shampoo your dog. $5 a month, and you get some stuff. It's a simple deal for complicated times. And now, hang on. One more. Hot coffee. And now, it's on to the 15th season of our filthy business.
Dana Gould Hour. Free and worth it.
It's a crisp, sun-dappled day high atop the Mulholland Drive U-shelf here in sunny Southern California, the People's Republic of California, here in the former United States. My guest today is written one of those books that, you have to read books when you interview the author, but this is a book that I would have bought and read anyway. And it's such an easy read. It's like butter. It's called Love Johnny Carson, One Obsessive Fan's Journey to Find the Genius Behind the Legend. And the thing is, I know a shit ton about The Tonight Show and Johnny Carson. Dr. Z is basically a peon to Johnny Carson. But this book is full of stuff I did not know. And it was such an easy read. And I'm talking to the author, who is himself not only an author, but a comedian, Mr. Mark Malkoff.
Dana, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Now, Mark, where are you?
I am in Astoria, Queens.
You're in New York.
Yes, I've lived in New York for a long time, for several decades.
Have any famous presidents ever come from Queens?
Not that I know of. Not yet. But we'll see. Yeah, I've been out here for a long time, and I miss Los Angeles. My brother's out there. I get there from time to time. But yeah.
Where'd you grow up?
Hershey, Pennsylvania,
okay,
where it
so
smelled like chocolate. I am. And then I would drive as a teenager to NBC to go to Saturday Night Live and Letterman's NBC 12:30 show. And I knew I wanted to move to New York from even when I was in high school. So my favorite memories, people talk to my high school classmates. They love the football games. And my weekends camping out for Saturday Night Live tickets and going to the show. That was the best.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 94.
Okay. So you weren't steeped in Johnny Carson.
I was 16 when he went off the air, and
right.
I remember recognizing the significance because my dad, from when I was like 4 or 5 years old, got me into classic entertainment. So I'm watching Stanley Kramer. It's a mad, 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 mad world. I know who from like the time in kindergarten their classmates are talking about Mighty Mouse. I'm talking about Buddy Hackett and Jerry Lewis.
Okay.
So he got me into Carson early, and Johnny would do primetime anniversary shows, and we would record them on VHS, and I would watch them over and over again. And there was just something so likable about him. And I read every book I possibly could on The Tonight Show, but it just astounded me for somebody that iconic that dominated American culture for 30 years, that there wasn't a lot of information about behind the scenes of the show or Johnny. And I just set out on a quest to talk to people.
Yeah, that's funny. Did you become as big a fan of Letterman, Conan, Leno, or was it always tied to Johnny? Because I have that too. I'm much more interested in stuff that came just before my sort of cognizance of it.
I love Letterman. I watched it from a different lens. I mean, Dave definitely, in terms of innovation, in terms of the influence of the amount of comedy that has come through and been influenced by Dave in decades. It's unbelievable, Dave. I mean, I would go to the show. I worked for the show briefly for about a year. I love Dave.
Were you a PA on the show? Or?
No, I worked in the audience department on the Sullivan, at the 8th floor of the Sullivan Theater for 11 months and 15 days, but who's counting? And I saw Dave Letterman 2 times. One when we took a staff photo, and once at the holiday party, which was the last one I think he ever went to, and that would have been December of '98. And we all knew not to go up to him, but
right,
yeah,
God, that was right around the time I did it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Was Zoe Friedman still booking?
Zoe Friedman booked me. Yeah.
Yeah. She was great. It was amazing to be there. I mean, I was at Dave's very first show at CBS just as a fan in the audience and on August 30th, 93, and going to the NBC
must have been hard
show.
Tickets to get.
Oh, it was the freaking lottery. I couldn't believe it. You could only send one postcard in per household. So I'd put myself, and then I'd take all my friends and my relatives, and I would send in postcards under their names, and I would tell them, if you get the tickets, give them to me. And I was able to do that. But going to Dave's NBC show, I still think that that's probably hands down the funniest late night show in history, at Dave's NBC show. But Carson was just an education into show business. I mean, there were so many iconic moments and people that went through the show. And in terms of likability, I mean, Johnny would always tell people, I wish I could do what Dave did, but the audience would not accept me making fun of people and doing the anti-talk show.
Right.
Dave tried, or rather, Johnny tried a few times to emulate Dave, and it never worked.
He did.
The bits were
really
uncomfortable. Weird. The bits were uncomfortable. They did not work. Peter LaSalle would tell me that basically talked Johnny out of it, but it was... Robert Morton, Dave's producer on the NBC show, would sit down with Dave, and they would just say about how what is Johnny doing? This is so sad that he's trying to be like this. But it was tough because, Johnny at that point was this institution, and all the press and the younger people especially were just all about Dave Letterman. And Johnny's nightmare was to go head to head against Letterman in competition. And NBC was paying Dave like $1 million a year, not to work. He was guest hosting for Johnny once in a while. And his manager, Buddy Mora, was talking to Westinghouse about going syndication, and he would have been competing against Johnny. The best case scenario for Johnny was to have NBC put Dave on after him and limit him. And they would not let him do Friday shows for 3 years, which is the time that all the young people stay up. So they would give him, I think, 3, maybe 4 90-minute Fridays a year, but they wouldn't let him do a monologue. They would let him do 4 jokes. It was basically, Johnny wanted Letterman to succeed, but definitely not to succeed to a place where the ratings were higher. And Dave was really limited. Yeah. And
didn't Letterman do the same thing to Jon Stewart? Letterman put Jon Stewart under contract and just parked him in an office.
They wanted him. Peter LaSalle wanted Jon Stewart, and Rob Burnett apparently really wanted Kilborn. And there was a big disagreement, and it was not pretty. And Rob Burnett got Kilborn, who did very, very well on the Late Show. It would have been a different show, but Peter, was really. But John got paid a lot of money just to ride the bench for a little bit.
Right.
It was even with Tom Snyder. I get to this in the book. NBC wanted to launch Tom Snyder after Johnny's primetime special with a big audience. Johnny said, absolutely not. I end the network. It's my night. And he purposely gave him Joey Bishop as a guest host to get lower ratings for his premiere. Carson was very generous, but his competitiveness got petty, I think.
I want to get into all that. Let's back up and roll into this because the Tom Snyder story is so fascinating. I grew up in the 70s. and early 80s. And I was starting from 11, 12 watching Carson at night. And so I did get to see a lot of that 70s stuff. I remember watching the episode where he noticed that Don Rickles had broken his cigarette case and he walked into CPO Sharkey next door. I watched that a lot.
That was innovative. That was a huge moment.
Yeah. What's amazing is you talk about Letterman, because Letterman was doing essentially, and I don't know how much of this was Letterman and how much of this was Merrill Markoe, was doing a parody of The Tonight Show.
It was the anti-talk show.
Yeah, it was the anti-talk show.
Yes.
And then he had to do a bank shot back into being mainstream. But Carson had to follow Jack Paar. It's important to know, one, Johnny takes over The Tonight Show in 1962. People don't understand these days the way that television audience is. There were only 2 or 3 things on. And I think basically half the people that had televisions watched the first episode of The Tonight Show, which is unheard of today. Literally half the people watching television were watching the same thing. And there's nobody today where you can draw an analogy to that just level of cultural influence.
Yeah, the power. I mean, especially Jack Paar was the hottest thing in TV, and Johnny turned it down a couple times. His wife, Joanne Wife too, was the driving force that really convinced him to take it. And behind the scenes was really running the Tonight Show. And Peter Lasalle said Johnny had no idea how powerful she was. I mean, she got a bunch of producers hired. She's the one that got NBC to come to Johnny's Friars Club roast of Gary Moore to get him the Tonight Show. And Johnny had no idea she was pulling the strings. But I do.
And that's the thing in your book. That's the thing in your book that I'd never read in any of the books, was that how much his wife Joanne was instrumental in not only pulling the strings to get him the job, because he was just hosting an afternoon game show.
That's right.
She really coached him through those first years.
She was in the front row for months when he debuted. There's no way that Vegas would have happened in 1964. She's the one that said, we are going to do this as a team. And they timed it they worked on the act together. And she was the one. He ended up beating Judy Garland's attendance record in Vegas in 64 when they did that. She's the one that, because he was very non-confrontive, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And she's the one that, you were going to stand up to NBC, do what I say. And he ended up just getting so much power and putting his foot down. And that was all emulated from Joanne.
One thing I did not know. So his first show in September of 1962, Jack Paar leaves. There's a 6-month window before Johnny takes over. People always think of the famous switchover was Carson ends the show on Friday and Leno takes over the show on Monday. Yeah. Doesn't mention Johnny. But Jack Paar finished in 1961 or 62. Then there's
February.
Then there's a 6-month window.
That's right.
Because Johnny was still under contract to ABC and they wouldn't let him out of his contract. And they just have guest hosts on. And then Johnny takes over in 1962 and his first guests are, Groucho Marx does an unscheduled appearance. This is in New York.
Yeah.
Joan Crawford, Mel Brooks, Tony Bennett. Because the show was almost 2 hours long.
That's right. It was Rudy Valley and the Phoenix Singers. And it was one of those things where Mel Brooks was telling me about being backstage for the first show and just getting Groucho's autograph. And he couldn't believe he was there. He talked about upsetting Tony Bennett standing on the desk. And if you, I really wanted to give the readers and just people a kind of an inside glimpse of Johnny's very first show. And I talk about that gentleman, Stan Berman, who was the most famous gate crasher. He interrupted the Academy Awards and got on TV. It was front page news with Bob Hope and gave him a fake Oscar. He infiltrated the Kennedys' inauguration and had a photo with them.
This guy is insane. What is it? What is his name? Charles?
He was a New York cab driver. His name is Stan Berman.
Berman.
He got arrested for going up to Queen Elizabeth at the Waldorf. I mean, he would infiltrate everything. He has a disguise and he gets in the Tonight Show audience. And Johnny's very first ever interview with Rudy Valley, who's plugging How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying on Broadway. They're doing their interview and Berman runs up on stage and nobody stops him. And Johnny realizes this is live to tape. This is going to get in. And he handled it really well. And the critics even acknowledged that. They said said Johnny was very calm and asked him politely to leave. Because back then, the biggest A-list guest, they would say for the end of the show to make the audience watch the whole hour 45 minutes. So Joan Crawford was at the end of the show.
Right.
So, but his very first interview was derailed.
And yeah, which is such a weird way to start the show. And it's a story that nobody knows. This guy he is obsessed with gate crashing. How do you gate crash a presidential inaugural?
Got the photo with Kennedy and his family. I mean, it was one of those things where he would just dress the part and he knew what to say, and he was arrested a bunch of times. But
this was before Jack Ruby, when they started to tighten the screws.
Oh man, he was hanging out with Princess Grace. I mean, he was just everywhere. And Jerry Lewis actually optioned to do a film about him. It never happened. Yeah. But Stan Berman was an interesting guy, but he was long forgotten. But he derailed the first interview ever.
And then in Mel Brooks's office is a photo of Mel on The Tonight Show from the first episode.
Yes.
And in the photo, he's sitting next to Johnny at the desk. I always assumed that, God, in the early days, you'd sit at the desk with the host.
Sometimes they would.
I know they did that sometimes on Merv Griffin, but in this case, it was, and I didn't know this until I read your book. Mel comes out, does his interview. It's funny, people don't realize it's 1962 and Mel is already huge. And he finishes his interview, and then he comes back out later and just sits down at the desk.
When Joan Crawford is there and he stands on the desk and imitates Tony Bennett and everyone laughs. But Mel was unbelievable to be there. And it was a big deal. When you would see...
Still a force of nature.
Once in a while, when Skitch Henderson and Ed McMahon would guest host, they would sit at the desk together. So sitting at the desk together would happen sometimes.
Yeah. Mel's still a force of nature.
Oh, gosh, he's amazing. He's 98. Yeah, he's still doing it.
Yeah, still cranking it out. So Carson... the New York years are really fascinating to me because it's a whole other career. There's not a lot of shows that survive. Mm-hmm. And he's the king of New York. Like during Mad Men, Johnny Carson is the most famous guy in New York. Like, he's just omnipresent and he runs that town. And there's that famous story in Henry Bushkin's book about him suspecting that Joan is cheating on him.
Yes, there was some truth to that. It was not the person. It was not Frank Gifford who Bushkin mentioned. It was never Frank Gifford. Frank Gifford dated Johnny's. It would have been the second wife before Johnny and her got married. But it was a race car driver, Peter Revson. That was the person that Joanne was involved with, and Johnny flipped out.
Yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, and I also said that. Now, was Arnie Kogan a Tonight Show writer, or was he just around? Okay, because he
was there. I talked to him. I talked to so many of the original Tonight Show writers from New York, and
so you must know Arnie's son as well.
Jay, I was going to do Jay's podcast the last time I was in LA, but then he had to go to Italy. It happens. But I was going to say the one thing about New York that I love is when they would do the Hollywood visits, because it would go off the rails. Like so many times when people talk about the most famous stories from the Tonight Show, George Gobel with the tuxedo and brown shoes, the anarchy that would go on. The first time they went out to in 1964 to LA, and Brando was downing champagne and goes out drunk and gets into a fight with Zsa Zsa Gabor on television. I mean, you never knew what was going to happen when they went to LA, and then they go back to New York.
Yeah, it was
more sophisticated.
Yeah, it was the wild, wild west, and that's one of the things that I love about the Tonight Show from that era, and just a lot of TV from that era. And it's one of the things that I haven't done enough on Dr. Z, but I should. Is people would just be hammered. People would come out drinking, everybody's smoking. Yeah. And like I know on Match Game, they would shoot all of the Match Games in a day.
Sure.
And by Friday, they were just plowed.
There were a lot of liquid lunches, I was told, on Hollywood Square's Match Game. And it was one of those things where George Papard went out in the mid-'70s and he acknowledged later
Paul Williams.
Oh, it was so ugly. I wish you could see it. It's not available online. But at one point, Paul Williams tells me the story. I mean, he said he was ready to fight George Papardi, called him a midget. I mean, it got ugly. I mean, it was such anarchy that Johnny runs off the set, and Richard Harris, who wasn't even a guest that night, he was off to the side with Fred DeCordova, and his wife, Ann Turkle, was on. That Richard Harris just comes on and takes Johnny's place and starts asking his wife pre-interview questions that Johnny had just asked his wife. I mean,
this episode, and this episode isn't available. You'd have to go to the museum.
No, I can. I'm sure I can probably get you a copy so you can watch it. But
I would love to see that.
Paul Williams almost put it in his documentary, but I think he mentioned he was afraid that it would overshadow everything else because it's so wild. I mean,
by the way, such a small world.
Yeah,
Paul Williams documentary made by my friend Steve Kessler.
Yeah, small world, but
super small world.
And
Jay Kogan,
yeah.
Tom LaSalle, all these people.
And then talk about Planet of the Apes, hearing Paul Williams tell me about, I mean, he was making Planet of the Apes and just showed up in the monkey mask. Yeah. And they had no idea that he was going to do this. And that would not happen today. Everything with those talk shows is so scripted. And for something to happen really impromptu like that is...
If I had $10 for everyone who sent me that saying, have you seen this? I would be a wealthy man. Yeah. Paul, I did a show at Largo here in LA with Paul Williams.
Oh yeah.
And I was in the Dr. Z makeup, and I was waiting for him to go, oh my God. And he walks past me in the hall and he just goes, without breaking stride, very hard to do cocaine in that, and keeps walking.
He was witty. Paul Williams was great.
Still is.
He was as funny as a comic. There were certain people like him and Kelvin Trillin would get laughs like Robin Williams would equal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was unbelievable.
You know who's like that now? Who? Steven Weber.
Oh yeah, he's funny. Nice guy. I've met him before.
Yeah, Steven Weber is as funny as any comic. Yeah, probably funnier.
He's on Frank Santapadre's podcast, I think, this week by the time it airs and stuff. And he's very witty. He's funny, man.
Yeah, he's really funny. When did you start writing this book? Because you seem to have had access to everyone. Are these all just cold calls?
I had no idea when I started, Dana, that everyone would want to talk about him. I did a podcast for 8 years. I talked to almost 400 people, and then writing the book, which took an additional 4 years.
And the podcast was, so people
called the Carson Podcast. And I talked to anybody that went on the show, that worked on the show. And it was one of those things where I thought I was just going to do maybe 5 or 7 interviews because I didn't want to put out anything negative. And from reading the Bushkin book and some other things, I really thought it was going to go negative. And I was shocked when so many people told me not only that they love Johnny Carson, hence the title of the book, Love Johnny Carson. Just it was all about how much that they meant to him and his kindness behind the scenes. It was a completely different Johnny. His friends consistently would tell me the same thing, which I still, right to this day, it's hard to believe, which they would say that he was almost the same Johnny you would see on and off the Tonight Show. But there were a couple things that he had to be comfortable with you. He had to be friends with you for many years. And this was a small group, but they said he was a little less gregarious, but that he was the same Johnny. And the media made him out to be this cold and aloof guy. And I'm sure he was to some people for self-preservation reasons, but that was astounding to me.
Yeah, he was, my wife is from Omaha. So there's a Nebraska mentality of, that I can totally see. And I think that, I love that your book is not negative. It's really beautiful in that regard. And I don't see how anybody can be as in the public eye as he was. And unless you're Christ, any negative thing you do is going to get magnified and blown up. And, to be so famous, he had to be reserved. So he's not living the Truman Show. So he has his own, life outside of the show. I can completely see how he would be reserved like that.
Everybody thought they knew him. They would grab him by the arm. If he was at a restaurant, they would sit down at his table. Mark David Chapman, who killed John Lennon, had a short list of people. If it wasn't Lennon, Johnny was on the list. The FBI was constantly protecting Carson from threats. He had to protect himself. The one thing I did, there were a few things I did was important with the book, because you mentioned it was positive, and I really do appreciate that. But Johnny would talk on the Tonight Show about struggle with alcohol. It was an open book on the Tonight Show, and I really did want to show some of his struggles. And that was one thing that he would say he would have one drink too many, and he would turn into Attila the Hun. Ed McMahon would help him in New York to get home at night, and he just said that, some people get fun-loving when they drink, and Johnny would want to fight the room. So there were a couple things that he struggled with, especially with the being overly competitive, and we do go into that in the book, and I thought that was fair game since he did talk about that.
Yeah, Mr. Brooks told me a story about going out that he and Ann and Johnny and I don't know which wife it was, probably Joanne, went out one night, and Mel Brooks goes, Johnny had a couple of drinks and we never went out again.
Yeah, it was one of those things. He didn't really get it out in control until he got arrested in '82 for a DUI. And his lawyer was Robert Shapiro from OJ fame. And that was, I think, a wake-up call that he really needed to pace himself. And he got a lot better after that.
So he's in New York from, 62 to 72?
That's right.
62 to 71. And it's so... Again, it's almost impossible to draw an analogy to how huge and important that show was and that whole period of time. And it's kind of gone. You don't even, like, people think of Johnny Carson from beautiful downtown Burbank. And that's like, for most people, when they think of the Tonight Show, they think of 1979.
That's right.
And it was, by that time, people were wondering, when's he going to quit? Because he'd been doing it so long by that time. There's one show that I have found on YouTube in totality, which is August 24th, 1964, which is on YouTube.
That's Stan Zapka, who was a producer on The Tonight Show. His son, Billy Zapka, William Zapka's the Karate Kid. And Stan Zapka was a guest. And in his brilliance, he asked NBC to give him a copy, and that's why it exists.
The day I was born.
Whoa! What a treat!
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Crazy. It was very spooky.
Yeah.
very spooky. Yeah, not mentioned in the monologue, but but it is great to see. Yeah, but it is great to see the show then. How it looked. It's so, I love that era, the clothes, the design. It's so Thunderbirds. It's so fantastic.
Oh, it was fun. Yeah. It's a shame that NBC erased most of it. There are some kinescopes that exist here and there, like Ed Ames, Johnny, when that Tomahawk thing, Johnny insisted on having a copy and kept it. And I'm in Beverly Hills with 90, and Ed Ames is in his 90s telling me the story about he didn't know how to throw a tomahawk. So it was very surreal sitting down with these people and hearing these iconic stories.
Welcome to Celebrity Briss was the...
Yeah, exactly.
So why did they move to LA? Was Johnny sick of New York? Was it pressure from the network? Was it access to guests? New York in the early 70s was getting a little hinky.
Yeah, the moment Fred DeCordova got in, and he started October of 1970 officially, it was his mission to get the show to LA. He increased the number of trips to Los Angeles and kept pointing out to Johnny, we can get bigger guests when we're in Los Angeles. Johnny liked the weather out there. He liked the driving. And Fred DeCordova, everybody tells me, could talk anybody into anything. And it was Peter LaSalle also, I wanted to make the move. And they just got in Johnny's ear. And, Johnny's hero, Jack Benny was there. He had friends there. And he loved shutting down Sneaky Pete's, and it would be Bob Newhart and McMahon and sometimes Buddy Rich, and they would just have the place to themselves till 3 or 4 in the morning. And he just liked the lifestyle, and it just made more sense, I think. Johnny liked, especially, Ed McMahon had the limousine. Johnny thought that was ridiculous. Johnny drove himself. He didn't want a bodyguard. He did carry a gun for protection. He never had to use it, thankfully. But he just liked he could be more anonymous in LA.
He did carry a gun. That whole time.
Plated gun. I mean, he needed either a bodyguard or to have protection. I mean, there were people that would be climbing over his fence in Bel Air. It was constant threats, people getting past NBC security with weapons. I mean, I was with Jimmy Brogan at NBC a couple years, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember how many years ago. And he showed me, because we were in Johnny's old office in the basement. He showed me the secret passageway, the escape hatch that Johnny had built into his bathroom in case a crazed fan got in. And we walked through it. I mean, it was you never knew back then with people getting in with somebody that famous.
Wow. I had no idea. He had a basement office?
Yeah, he did. He had an upstairs office, and then it was getting renovated. They put him in the basement, and he loved it down there, and he was there. And whenever I can get back into that building at NBC Burbank, it's now called Burbank Studios, I'll just go back and go. I'll go into the Studio One, and the seats are still there, and you can still feel a little bit of presence of the Tonight Show. And I'll go down to Johnny's office.
Did you ever go there when Johnny was hosting the show?
I was too young. I was 13 when I took the tour. So I was able to see the Rainbow Curtain and be in Studio One. And the NBC page basically had to, pull me by the arm to get me out of there. I mean, I was such in awe. I would have loved to have seen the show. By then, Johnny, I think, was only doing the show maybe 3 nights a week just because he didn't have the energy anymore to be doing it. But I would have loved to have seen it. But did you ever see it?
I did. I went backstage for Albert Brooks's last appearance, and I stole his dressing room card that I have.
Yes.
I have that somewhere.
That's amazing. Wow.
Albert would no doubt find this horrifying. But and the thing that I remember seeing, I must have gone with Kevin Rooney. The thing that I remember seeing was when they walk Johnny backstage and he has people, with him, bodyguards, I'm assuming. He was orange. That's what I remember. Like the makeup so he would read normal on TV. I was like, God, that guy's orange.
Yeah, they would plaster him. He'd have retired NBC detectives, police officers normally with him before the show. The audience, the people rather that worked at the show would tell me before he would go out in front of the audience that sparks would be flying off of him, and they could tell his energy that he'd be behind them because he'd be so jammed up before excited to do the show. And they said that shaking hands with him was like a nuclear reactor. I mean, he poured himself into that show for then when you were going to the show an hour. But Albert Brooks was great. They could not get him enough. Albert wouldn't go out there unless he had something really special. And he almost guest hosted the show, and it's because he went to the hospital. That's how Shanley got his big break as a guest host as an unknown. Only the second person to ever guest host the show that was an unknown, him and Dave Letterman. So
tell that story.
I thought Albert would have been an amazing guest host. Albert was all set to guest host the show, and Herb Nanis called into the show and said Albert has a kidney stone or something, is unavailable. And Jim McCauley, who was the talent booker, really wanted to give this unknown Gary Shandling a shot. I mean, it had never happened with an unknown other than Dave Letterman. And Fred and Peter were very cautious, and they said, let's get Bert Convy, all these other people. And McCauley just lied and said, it's last minute. None of them are available. And finally, they caved, and McCauley got a hold of Brad Gray finally. And Shandling happened to be at the office, and Gray told Shandling, and all McCauley would hear is sobbing because Shandling, this was his dream to guest host, and he was crying. So he can't believe as an unknown he's going to be hosting the Tonight Show. And he walks out the next night. He has less than 24 hours to prepare. And you can see Shandling is almost crying. He has this big smile on his face, and he can't believe that his dream is coming true.
Wow. And then, of course, Gary later sued Brad Gray.
Yes, and that did happen and settled, I guess.
I didn't know that's how Shandling came to host the show. And I remember seeing Letterman on the Tonight Show in the late 70s. And that was also like lightning in a bottle. And it's so funny because when you watch them now, the way comedy has changed, stand-up has changed. The jokes are like, they're okay. They're not like fastballs that you would have today. A couple of them, but you could get by with a lot less.
Yeah, the pace was different for sure.
Yeah, pace was different. Well put. But Carson just adored Letterman. You could see it out of the gate. It was like Letterman and Stephen Wright were the two people that Carson just seemed to really adore. But Letterman, he clearly saw as my successor. Oh, this guy can do this.
Dave just was in such an awe of Johnny and treated him with such respect, and Johnny just appreciated that. And it was one of those things where Dave just could always come up with new material and be really funny, where Leno had premiered about a year earlier, and Johnny loved him at first, but he ran out of material, and that got him banned from the show. Leno was banned from 7 years, and Dave always was able to come up with material and never had that issue. But then, of course, Jay gets red hot being banned from Johnny. He goes on Dave's 12:30 show and does 40 appearances and crushes so hard that Johnny in 1986 changes his mind and said, now we have to get Leno back. Everyone loves him. And Jay said he would only come back if he could guest host twice, The Tonight Show. And that's, of course, he did very well. And he became the permanent guest host because Shandling turned it down. They wanted to give it to Shandling.
Well, that's also why we have the show Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Because NBC put Jerry, Gary, and I guess Jay or somebody, they put anybody who was a likely successor, NBC put them under contract. Because they didn't want them going to ABC or anyplace else. And Seinfeld, the show, was just something for Jerry to do while under contract to keep him on the plantation, so to speak. And I think at first they did 2 episodes or 4 episodes.
There was a few episodes.
Just give him this thing to keep him. It was the Seinfeld Chronicles. Just give him this thing to keep him busy. Really, we're just keeping him on deck in case we need him for the Tonight Show.
I don't know how that guy came up with as much materials, going on 4 times a year and just always with material. The first time he was on the show, his dad back in Long Island took out a classified ad in the newspaper. My son Jerry's going to be on the Tonight Show. Everybody watch. And he had a sign on his van. My son Jerry is going to be on Johnny Carson on this date. And the proud father, Cal Seinfeld.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
It's fun.
Yeah. And Shandling was offered the show, was he not?
He was offered the permanent guest host. I don't know if NBC would have had him be the permanent host, but Shandling thought, and it's probably true, that if you're on every single night on TV, it changes you, and not for the best, and he thought it would just make him into somebody he didn't want to be. And Peter LaSalle reluctantly told me that he gave it to Leno, who was a fine guest host. He did a very fine job, but then Johnny started to regret it when his manager, Helen Kushnick, was planting a story that NBC wanted Johnny out, and there were all these battles and complications with Jay's manager, and Johnny never understood it. I didn't get why she had to do it, but if it was up to Johnny, it would have been Dave Letterman's show. But NBC never asked Johnny, and they were going to give it to Jay. I mean, Jay went to every NBC affiliate. He politicked as Helen had him do. He was easy to work with. Where Dave was calling the NBC executives pinheads, making fun of GE. Who are you going to give the show to? I mean, it made sense.
No, Jay definitely won that position because it was Letterman's, and and Jay went out and got it.
Jay told me on the phone, he gave me 50 minutes for the book. He's like, they just gave me the show, I was at 11:30 and they gave, I'm like, Jay, Helen had you politic to all the affiliates. And I was very polite, but I called him out on what happened.
We read the book. You hid in a closet. We've all read the book.
Yes, proudly he did do that. So, but I appreciate him giving me time. But the guest hosting thing, Jay did a good job. It's unbelievable to look back at the Tonight Show, the amount of people like Arnold Palmer, Lauren Green, the guest host of the Tonight Show. No rhyme or reason. You'd have either Cass Elliot or Diana Ross. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and people don't even know, that only watch Kimmel or whatever. It used to be the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and then Johnny went down to 4 nights a week or 3 nights a week, and then there would be a guest host. And people know that Joan Rivers was a permanent guest host. Right. It was always Joan Rivers, and then she went out and did her own show, and then Jay Leno became the permanent guest host. But before they had permanent guest hosts in the 70s, it would be anybody. Roger Moore was a guest host. Frank Sinatra was a guest host.
That's right.
And there's a famous one where 1968, John Lennon and Paul McCartney are in New York promoting what became Apple.
That's right.
The two of the most famous human beings on the face of the earth, Joe Garagiola, is hosting the Tonight Show, and he interviews them.
McCartney and Lennon were furious. They thought it was Johnny Carson. They never would have agreed for Garagiola.
And he was terrible.
He was inept on the interview. And I really, really wanted him on the podcast, and he called me. I still have the voicemail. I saved the voicemail. At that point, just he wasn't able to do interviews. But yeah, that was a train wreck. And it was fun to talk to the people. Ginny Beauregard, who was Johnny's assistant, snuck McCartney and Lennon into the building and out of the building. And it was wild. I mean, they had to put them up on a different floor, which had never happened. And then Danny Bennett, Tony Bennett's son, Tony took them over to try to meet Lennon and McCartney. And the amount of security that was there, it was unbelievable. But those guys were not happy. It was Gargiola and Tallulah Bankhead, 6 months before she passed away, was on something. I don't know if she was drinking or what, but it was a train wreck episode for sure.
And it's also amazing that Johnny just went, yes, I don't care. Johnny didn't come in.
Johnny was under contract to play Marilyn. He would have been there, and the show couldn't believe that McCartney and Lennon agreed to do it. And finally, in '83, I think it was, they got McCartney on the show. And McCartney now, well, you can't stop him from playing a marathon of songs, but they tried to even give him a guitar, and he refused to play in '83 when he was on with Carson. But that was one of the episodes where the staff told me that it was Beatlemania, not outside of NBC, inside.
Sure.
Even the employees. It was with chaos that you've never seen when McCartney was there.
Yeah, well, that was also after Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah,
where they were still together in a unit, and they were gods. I mean, I can imagine. I was talking to my friend Kevin Fitzgerald, who did security for Elvis and the Stones, and he said like that Elvis had, like Carson, he had an aura. Like there was just the charisma. And Kevin worked with him at the end. And even then, he was otherworldly. Did Elvis ever do The Tonight Show? I know he was a big fan.
They tried to get him. He was very wary about doing television post Ed Sullivan, in terms of he felt he had to do the Elvis comeback special, which they did at NBC, is just kind of like for his career. Right. But he never did Carson's show. Johnny and him had met in Vegas, and
there's a photo of them together in your book, which is
and then
crazy.
There's this, one of his Memphis Mafia people or somebody told a story that was not true, that when Elvis turned 40, Johnny did a joke at Elvis's behalf that was really mean-spirited, but the actual joke that he really did tell was nothing, and it was
that's in the book.
Yes.
The story went, Elvis heard that Johnny said that Elvis was now fat and 40.
Never said it.
The real joke was so tame, which is Elvis turned 40. He's now wearing orthopedic blue suede shoes.
That's exactly right.
Completely fine joke. Completely fine joke.
Dana, I have to tell you, the amount of people that have told me these claims from people that were fans of the show that swear that things happen, and then I go to the videotape and do my research. It's unbelievable.
Well, the famous, would you like to pet my pussy?
Yeah.
Which is Zsa Zsa Gabor. I had heard it was Anne Margaret.
Oh, there's a bunch of variations.
But it never happened.
No, the late Jack Jones, famous singer.
Tell the story.
Jack Jones told me after we were recording, he's like, "Can I tell you a story? We're not recording." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he told me he watched that interaction on The Tonight Show, and I'm like, I didn't want to be like Mr. Jones. It never happened.
For people that don't know it, tell the story.
This is what happened. Jane Fonda went on The Tonight Show, and this was when the show was in Burbank, I think 80s, early 90s, and said, my son swears she was watching The Tonight Show and Zsa Zsa Gabor was on and had a cat in her lap, and she said, "Johnny, would you like to pet my pussy?" And my son said that you said, "I'd love to, as long as you first get the damn cat out of the way." And both Johnny and Zsa Zsa denied it happened. Johnny said he wishes it would have happened, but the NBC censors never would have let anything like that happen.
Yeah, no way.
Now, Cliff Nesterhoff, who I know you know is a brilliant comedy historian, found a clip, and I watched it, which is Stump the Band. And there's something very similar where there's a song about something like that. And Cliff has the theory, and it could have been that that's what how the myth started. But people will swear that they saw it, but it never happened. Just like Arnold Palmer, something about his wife washing his balls, stuff that never happened on the show that to this day people for whatever reason believe
there is a famous story that's covered in the book that Johnny and Wayne Newton had a long-standing feud that began by Johnny making recurrent jokes about Wayne's lack of masculinity, according to Johnny.
It was one joke. I did the research. I poured it over everything. Mr. Newton has told the story numerous times in different ways. One time he said he was watching The Tonight Show in 1973, and it did take place in 73. He was in Los Angeles. He said he watched Johnny make a joke saying, "I saw Liberace and Wayne Newton in a pink hot tub. What do you think that means?" First of all, this makes absolutely no sense. One, it's not a joke. There's no joke there. Two, Wayne.
But that would have passed as a joke then, because that was the thing about, we've talked about this a lot in the late 70s, the way that you would refer to a gay guy, Bruce. Couple guys named Bruce.
Johnny stopped doing Bruce jokes because he was getting mail, and a woman said, "My son's name is Bruce." But Laughing, Joan Rivers, Johnny, they did Bruce jokes, and that was. Did you ever hear the parody of The Tonight Show that I think it's Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, and Landers? Yes. Yeah. What is the name of the? Was it from a group that they did, or? Oh gosh, wasn't it? Oh goodness, Credibility Gap. Credibility Gap. Yeah. They did a parody of Johnny. And couple guys named Bruce. Yes, but Johnny stopped doing the Bruce jokes, but to my knowledge, it was one joke. And Newton's, I want to mention that Liberace was guest hosting the show and was friends with Johnny and would go on the show. And Johnny would make fun of Liberace's clothes, but never do gay jokes about Liberace. So that didn't make any sense. And then Mr. Newton told the story that he went into Capitol Records and his drummer said, "Did you hear what Johnny said about you last night?" And it repeated the Liberace story. So this is what did happen. In 1973, Wayne Newton absolutely showed up unannounced to Johnny's office and confronted him on a joke. Whether he heard it or not, I can't tell because he's told it both ways. This was the joke. The one and only joke I'm aware that Johnny ever did about Mr. Newton. Johnny was doing a Jack Cousteau sketch and he was playing Jack Cuckoo, and it's very Carson. He would drink water vials and he could identify where they were from. Oh, this is from the Pacific Ocean. This is from this. And he drank a vial and he said, "Oh, this is quite sweet. I know this is from Wayne Newton's pool." That was a joke that he did. Mr. Newton did barge into Johnny's office and threaten him. Johnny right away explained what he actually said and said, "I'm a fan of yours." And there was some yelling, but very quickly, everything was good. As an olive branch, Johnny invited Mr. Newton on the show, and he hadn't been on with on Johnny's show with Johnny in like 8 or 9 years. Let him guest host the show several times as an olive branch, and all was good. There was peace. I've talked to people over at The Tonight Show. Wayne would come on with Johnny, all was good until 1980 when they both bid for the Aladdin Hotel, and it was a surefire thing that Johnny was going to get approved. And for whatever reason, Johnny doesn't know what exactly happened. Wayne Newton was able to outbid him and get the hotel. And NBC News then, some months later, did 3 stories about Wayne Newton allegedly having ties to a mob figure. Wayne Newton was convinced that was Johnny's influence, couldn't prove it, sued NBC News, said Johnny was responsible. Then the next day said, "I was wrong, Johnny wasn't responsible," but still privately blamed Johnny and waited until Johnny passed away until he went on Larry King in 2007 and said that all emulated from Johnny, but he never offered any proof whatsoever. But Wayne Newton spent millions of dollars, I guess, on lawyers trying to sue NBC, and he won a lot of money. But then when they appealed, Wayne Newton didn't get a dime. He got nothing. It was vacated. Yeah, he got nothing on it. And I like Wayne Newton. He's a great entertainer. I heard he's a nice guy, but anybody that makes fun of him, like Bill Maher, he went after Bill Maher. McLean Stevenson did a joke about Wayne Newton about having a big head. It wasn't a gay joke or anything. And Wayne Newton claims that he, I guess, beat up McLean Stevenson and made him cry. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's not true. Everyone I've talked to said McLean Stevenson was a nice guy, but Wayne Newton, anybody that does a joke about him, Conan did something and Wayne Newton wrote Conan a letter. He was like, "I thought you were better than this, Conan." I mean, when you're a public figure of that magnitude, the jokes, unfortunately, are going to come. Johnny Carson was hurt badly by the Dana Carvey sketches that Robert Smigel wrote on SNL. Robert told me to this day it's one of his big regrets that he upset Johnny Carson. But when you're a public figure like that they're going to come. But for whatever reason, that is so funny. Yeah. That is so funny. I did want to get into that. That was one of the signs that he was not cool anymore. Plus, it was
It was on NBC. It was like on the network that he created.
I mean, Lord was the one.
And the sketches, I love those sketches. I love Johnny Carson and I love Dana Carvin. I love the sketches
too. I like them a lot. They got to be
brutal.
Listen, the SNL only exists because Johnny gave Lorne Michaels and Dick Ebersol permission. Tonight Show was running on Saturdays at 11:30. Johnny didn't want them anymore. 29-year-old Lorne Michaels and Dick Ebersol goes to Johnny's office and they have to pitch him this show. And Johnny wants to make sure it's very unlike what he's doing, gives them permission. And before he knows it, Jane Curtin is doing a joke about Johnny's show about how dead it is, and Chevy Chase is being flaunted as his successor after 8 episodes, and Johnny just for whatever reason had a problem with SNL, and then those sketches did get a little mean, and Johnny just didn't want to be perceived as old and out of touch, and it was one of the contributing factors for Johnny retiring for sure.
Yeah, those were, I remember specifically Carcinio.
That's right.
Which was, it's just like, and Lantern Jawed Freaks, or like when the Phil Hartman's parody of Ed McMahon. That must be a strange feeling for somebody like Carson to sense that you're becoming, what's the word? A relic.
Yeah. Norm Macdonald, we texted back and forth, and I include some of the text in the book, the messages about Carson, and his theory was that Smigel and Carvin just thought Johnny Carson was too big to ever care about those sketches, but they really devastated him. I mean, one time, Dana Carvin, Johnny said, "Ed, is there anything you want to get off your chest?" And Ed says, as Phil Hartman says, "You were the one that had the drinking problem," something like that to that effect, and talking about the drinking. And Norm loved that line. But
that was really funny because he said it really dead. You're the one that had the drinking problem.
Exactly. So every time that one of those sketches aired, Rick Ludwin, who was the NBC vice president of late night, who was responsible for Seinfeld, would sit down with Johnny on a Thursday and said, "Listen, Johnny, the sketch is going to at least get to dress rehearsal. We don't know if it's going to make air," but they would tell Johnny, and Johnny would always say, "I don't find them funny. I don't understand them, but we make fun of people. They're allowed to make fun of people. I just don't find it funny." And
by the way, big of him to let them on because he could have stopped them.
Yeah, Johnny said he told Tom Shales after he retired he probably could have put his foot down and probably have gotten them stopped, but he never did. And I think it was Johnny's third to last show. They had just done a sketch. It was they did a parody of what they thought Johnny's last show would be, and then Johnny in the monologue said one of his jokes was, "And I heard next year that NBC is actually going to do a comedy version of Saturday Night Live."
Yeah,
so that was his.
I remember watching. It was, how's this for a lineup? Johnny, Bill Cosby, and Morrissey.
Yes, that was. I talk about that in the episode. That was one of the biggest train wrecks of the train wrecks of the Tonight Show, and it was Johnny's final year. They tried to warn Johnny's producer not to book Morrissey because he was just too popular, and it would attract an audience that was not Johnny's, and that's exactly what happened. And the monologue was poisoned. They were not there to see Johnny. Bill Cosby, who was a huge TV star, sitcom, had trouble, and they were all there to see Morrissey and Johnny.
You could see Johnny and Bill getting annoyed.
Oh yeah. I mean, Johnny at one point is like to the Morrissey fans, Morrissey had to cancel, but we do have Jerry Vale. And they start booing. And then at the end of the show, Johnny's thanking the guest, but won't mention Morrissey on purpose. And the fans start booing. And Johnny says, mercifully, we say goodnight or something like that. It was a train wreck, and I get that the talent coordinators wanted to put somebody more youthful on the show, and he had just, I think, sold out the Fordham, and he was this big star. But that was one of those things where when I worked at Letterman, it was the same thing. If Fish was going to be on the show, they wanted to try to keep out the Fish fans, but Johnny's show wasn't like that, and sometimes it would just have a terrible effect because you want people that are there to see the host, that get the jokes, and if they're there to see a guest. If somebody would show up with a Pearl Jam t-shirt and Eddie Vedder was on, they would always send them up to the balcony at Letterman's show. I mean, they want people there to see the host.
Oh, that's really smart and obvious. I never thought about that. But yeah, you're here for the show, not the guest.
Yeah, it ruined shows for sure. I mean, Saturday Night Live for sure. when the VIPs, they don't do the VIPs as much as they used to for SNL. I mean, when I would go to the show, sometimes no standbys would get in. I'd always be able to get myself in because I knew people. But it would ruin shows like REM, Sarah Jessica Parker, and 94, zero standbys, and you can just hear crickets throughout the show. When you don't put the actual fans in there, they would ruin episodes. I mean, Dana Carvey's one of his first things when he got his own short-lived show on ABC was, I do not want any VIP audience members. We're not doing them. They would ruin SNL episodes.
Yeah, they never left. They never left.
They're terrible. They're very bad. And that's why now they usually let 70, sometimes 80 standbys in every episode of SNL just because they need to hear the laughs.
Yeah. Another like Carvey's parody of and it is weird because like Dana is parodying somebody that he also thinks is good and talented.
Yeah.
He
played him really gently. I like the gentleness that he played with Carson, but I mean, it got him banned, but I'm sure Dana was somewhat conflicted doing
as opposed to Rick Moranis's George Carlin.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't know, which was brutal.
Sure. Yeah. Moranis SCTV was unbelievable. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, George Carlin. It's fun to watch. There's just some kinescopes of his early appearances on the Tonight Show when he still wear suits.
Yeah.
And he was a fun guest host.
He was he's owes a lot because Johnny, when he first had the change in 71, where he stopped wearing suits, grew his hair. Originally, he was not like welcome on the show for a year, and I think that came from NBC. And then Carson had him back on, and he was always very gracious and welcoming to Carson. There's a funny video of George coming out like with a long T-shirt and the hair, and he gives Johnny like the soul shake instead of like a regular handshake.
That's hilarious. I really did want to credit the guest host for really introducing America to certain people. Martin Mull, Fred DeCordova said Martin Mull, you will never be on the Tonight Show. He auditioned, the manager said never have him in. And then a couple months later, George Carlin was guest hosting the show and said, Martin Mull is going to be on my show. And the guest host had some sway. Yeah. And he is the one. But within 6 months, Martin Mull is on with Johnny. And then 6 months later, he's guest hosting the show. I mean, so there's certain people like Kenny
Martin
Rogers.
Mull, by the way, perfect for that job.
Oh, yeah. And then there's other entertainers like Kenny Rogers. His career was in the toilet, couldn't get booked on the Tonight Show. And John Davidson put his foot down and said, I want Kenny Rogers. Did very, very well. And he started going on with Johnny and started guest hosting the show. And that turned his career, became a huge star. So the guest host a lot of times.
Bigger than he'd ever been.
Helen Reddy was a big person that champion of Elaine Boozler. And then Elaine did the show with Johnny, I think 6 months later. And she only did the show once. But yeah, she did the show. But that came in from a guest host. Yeah.
There's a really, the thing with Carson was, in addition to being he was never a comedian. He never like worked comedy clubs. He was just, but he was a magician.
That's right.
He loved magic. And when you go to the Magic Castle here in Los Angeles, they have his magic set. And also they have the backdrop, one of the backdrops behind the desk of,
that's right.
That's behind the bar at the Magic Castle. And Johnny loved having certain magicians on, but if they had to acknowledge that it was magic, it was Uri Geller that really annoyed Carson. Was that who it was?
Johnny and this gentleman, James Randi, the amazing Randi, were debunkers, and they hated psychics and religious people that they felt were just trying to get money and just prey on gullible people, televangelists rather.
Right.
And Johnny had Geller on, and Geller didn't know that the amazing Randy was working as kind of a consultant with the NBC props department, and told Johnny's people, do not let Geller touch anything. And Geller for 25 minutes or whatever it was couldn't make anything bend. He did touch a spoon. The only thing he did touch a spoon, and there was a slight bend, but he handled it. And Johnny just wanted to show America that this guy was not honest. I mean, Johnny's friend George Siegel showed up at a party and said, look at this key. Mr. Geller made it bend with his mind. And Johnny said, let me see the key, and was able to distract George Siegel and had it straightened within like 5 seconds. And George Siegel's like, how did you do that? And it's like, I distracted you. Any good magician could do this.
Yeah. It's really true. And it was Orson Welles did a mentalist act. He didn't cop to He did something that annoyed Johnny because Johnny felt he was dishonest.
Johnny thought he was dishonest to the audience, and he thought he was dishonest just as a magician's code, which is that Wells did a mentalist type routine. And Johnny heard that Wells was going to do this. Wells said he was going to do a Kreskin, and Johnny was intrigued. On his day off, Carson came in incognito in a disguise and hung out in the back of the studio and watched Wells try to do this mentalist thing. And he had stooges in the audience. He had plants in the audience. And that was the thing that Johnny thought was unforgivable and banned Wells from the show and never did the show again. And then Kreskin, after one of his appearances, Johnny asked Kreskin, how did you do that trick? Because Johnny knew Kreskin was just a magician and didn't have powers. And Kreskin said, I don't know how, implying that he had powers, and that got him banned from the show. So anybody that Johnny felt wasn't honest with him, they were done. I always wondered why David Copperfield wasn't booked on the show, because they had Doug Henning, illusionist.
Yeah, Doug Henning was in a lot.
My guess was maybe because Copperfield, it's been said, had plants in the audience, and that might have violated a magician's code in Johnny's mind. That's my best guess.
Did he ever have Penn and Teller on? Because I know that they were so big on Letterman, and I would think that he would like them because they were so dedicated to we're fooling you.
They were set to go on with Jay as guest host. They never did it with Johnny. I don't know why. One person told me, and I don't know if this is for sure, that Johnny was reluctant because they would show the audience how tricks were done sometimes, and that went against Johnny's code. I don't know if that's true or not, but they never did it with Johnny. But Penn Jillette, and after Johnny left and Johnny was in retirement, I know that he was in touch with Johnny with the Aristocrats, because that was one of Johnny's favorite jokes. And when Penn did that documentary,
I'm in that documentary.
Johnny, oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Johnny. I've watched clips where he references that joke, the Aristocrats, on the Tonight Show. He obviously can't tell it, but he references it. But I know that he admired Penn and Teller. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, Carlin is really great in the Aristocrats too. When he's talking about, I like to get into the texture, corn and things like that.
Yeah, the riffing is interesting. It's fun. It's to look back at the such big names that they got to do that. Yeah.
Why was William Shatner banned from the show?
Shatner did 3 things in one appearance. I think it was his 3rd time with Johnny. He sits down, and if you were going to not stick to the pre-interview, you better be entertaining. And for like 2 or 3 minutes, he wouldn't let Johnny get a word in, and was long-winded. There was no payoffs. And Johnny was very frustrated. And then William Shatner turned his back to Johnny, which he didn't want to do. And he started talking to guest Buddy Hackett, who had been on. So he turns his back to Johnny, which was another pet peeve of Johnny. The third thing is back then they would say, and my next guest is on a TV show called TJ Hooker on another network. They couldn't say what network. And of course, Shatner's like, yeah, and on Saturday night on ABC, TJ Hooker. And they had to beep out or mute rather ABC. So it was just 3 things. Johnny and Dave Letterman was the same way. They expect if you are in somebody's home, you're in my home, you are going to be have good manners. And
sure.
If Johnny thought the good manners were violated, they were gone. They had this one woman, Miriam Margolis, I think is her name. She's known for younger people from Harry Potter. And she would go on Johnny, and she was very, very funny and witty. And at one point she told this story that Johnny just thought was detestable and wouldn't have her back. And you can just see Johnny, just the disgust on his face. She talks about, I think she was in Ireland, and she said, quote, I had to move my bowels. And you just see Johnny's face, just his whole demeanor. And the audience is laughing because Bobby Quinn, the director, cuts to Johnny's reaction, but Johnny was disgusted, and she was never allowed on the show again. I mean, Letterman took that thing, his talent coordinators would tell the guests before the show, no bathroom humor, like several times they would mention that. Johnny and Dave hated that. And if somebody would go out and do something like that after being told not to, they were just never asked back.
Yeah, I can see that. I can understand. I can see that, and I can understand that. There's no modern day equivalent. I was really all these people that were such fixtures.
Yeah.
There's no modern day Carson. And there's no modern day Don Rickles. Like that was such, I can't think of any comedian like Don or Robin that was just such and Mel too, untethered force of nature.
There really wasn't. I mean, it was so unpredictable. A little bit with Norm Macdonald when he would go on Conan, maybe a little bit Letterman, but you never knew what the guy was going to do. But It's so interesting to me culturally to look back in whatever 1965 when Rickles debuts that it was so people were scared to put him on TV. He had never done late night. He was big in the clubs, and they would talk about Rickles as being this genius, but Rickles credits Sinatra and Carson for his big break, and Johnny put him on, and it was during one of the Hollywood visits. And when Rickles debuted, it was such a huge I don't know if controversial is the word, but Johnny had to talk to the audience, he felt, for 2 or 3 minutes and explain, okay, so this guy's going to come out and make fun of us, but it's okay.
What year was this?
This was 65, and he had to explain for 2 or 3 minutes what Rickles did, but it's okay that he's making fun of us, and all this explanation. And originally, it was determined that Rickles wouldn't be allowed to make fun of anybody, and then Rickles said, how can I do this if I can't make fun of anyone? So it was arranged that Rickles would make fun of Skitch Henderson and Ed McMahon. Johnny would laugh. The audience would see Johnny was laughing, so then eventually it would be okay for Rickles to make fun of Johnny. But it took a couple appearances for the audience to really understand and feel comfortable with somebody making fun of Johnny Carson, and to think that whole insult roast humor wasn't acceptable back then like that is really, it's hard to understand today.
It is hard to understand today. It is hard to understand today. And Don, and here's the thing, and the reason that people don't equate it with the sort of Kill Tony element of it that people do today, Don had nothing to do with that. Don was charming, and he was never mean-spirited.
That's true. He'd always be warming up behind the scenes, making fun of the staffers, but it was all love. And
it was all love. There's a twinkle in his eye, and he was charming, and because you could tell in real life that he was lovely. I mean, I met Mr. Rickles, and he would roast you, and then, do you have somebody good with your money? Does somebody help you with your money?
He worshipped Johnny. Yeah. I mean, he worshipped Johnny. There were a bunch of people like that. Ed McMahon was another one that was like his hero was Johnny. And Rickles was always a little bit in awe, and they would hang out socially from time to time. But
they call him. He'd call him John. How are you, John?
Yes, I talk about that in the book about the John Club. The John Club was like Bob Newhart, David Steinberg. There was a small group of people that he was John. I mean, those were the ones that he hung out with, that he spent time with, and
he was friends with Jack Lemmon too, wasn't
he? Was, yeah. They met back before they were both really famous. They met back in New York in like 1950 or something, and they were friendly. There were certain people that Johnny would spend time with. Burt Reynolds, when in the late 80s, when there were rumors that he had AIDS and a lot of his friends disappeared. Lonnie Anderson told me Carson was one of the people that was always there for Burt Reynolds when he had his hard times. Burt was always there when they adopted their son. Johnny was there, and the loyalty thing was a theme in the book that Johnny's friends all told me. Nothing more important. When something was violated, Johnny's heart was broken. I mean, Joan Rivers, one of the wives, said Johnny was crying when he found out that he felt betrayed from Rivers, and it was just there was nothing worse than being betrayed to Johnny.
You might not know this.
Okay.
Nixon had an aide named Jim McCauley. Is it the same Jim McCauley?
No. This McCauley that I know of was just, he worked as a talent coordinator for Alan Hamill up in Canada and worked on a bunch of TV shows and was friends with Pete Seeger. And he became the talent coordinator in 1977. And his first mission was David Letterman to get him on. And Letterman's manager, Buddy Morris, said, I don't know if you know this, but the Tonight Show's turned down Letterman 3 times. He's not going on your show unless he gets automatic panel. And the only people I know that ever got automatic panel like that was Robert Klein, another Jack Rollins, Buddy Morris client. Right. Eddie Murphy, because he was a cast member on SNL at that point, or a featured player in 81, he had automatic, but it was very rare for somebody to get automatic, but they were able to get it to him, and the rest is history.
And Carson also explained Robert Klein to the audience before he went out, because Robert Klein was quite revolutionary.
He was. I mean, so many people
now
like
he's
Leno
the
and
standard.
Seinfeld. Oh, he is. I mean, people like Leno and Seinfeld, he was their guy. And what he was doing, he was definitely somebody that had a big power manager, and him and Johnny were very friendly. It's a shame that the LA riots happened, and that's why Robert Klein wasn't able to go back like the last year. And I think Tony Randall was going to go back, and there were a bunch of people that never got to say goodbye to Johnny on air. Klein was one of them. But Klein guest hosted the Tonight Show. He was fun to hear his stories about doing the show.
Yeah, and he was. I mean, he's an underrated
Oh, he's a powerhouse. He's amazing.
Underrated influence on what you and I do.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
So much of what you and I do is codified by Klein more than anybody.
Yeah, he doesn't get probably enough attribution, and he's
I don't think so.
Still really, really funny.
I love him, yeah. I want to be the kind of boy that 94 can boast about. Okay, my last thing I wanted to talk about was, Johnny, I've heard this, and I don't know if this is true or not, that one of the reasons Johnny retired when he did was he, quote, didn't want to become Bob Hope.
That's right.
Is that true? How did he mean? And what was his retirement like?
Johnny loved Bob Hope. I mean, in the same version as Woody Allen, when they grew up on Hope and he was this big star and he became this other thing where he just stuck around too long, was, had trouble hearing. And when he would go on with Johnny, it just got to be really uncomfortable. The staff would make fun of Hope. He was not in any really peak shape, and Johnny didn't want to be that. He didn't like that the Saturday Night Live sketches were kind of putting him in like he was out of touch like Hope. He thought Lucille Ball stuck around too long in the 80s. It was a mistake for her to be there. Even his hero Jack Benny, he felt were sticking around too long. So he left. That was definitely a big factor. But you do notice when Johnny retires, he for 2 solid years, he does The Simpsons, he does the American Teacher Awards, and he does the Bob Hope 90th birthday in retirement because Bob asked him. And Johnny said, of course. I mean, he loved Bob Hope. He just thought that this was really sad. He felt that about Groucho Marx as well, that they stuck around way too long, and he didn't want to be that. But Johnny revered Bob, but that was definitely one of the issues where he wanted to get out. And I think Johnny would have maybe made some more appearances, but he quit smoking right when the show ended and gained weight. And I think that was cosmetically another reason why after 2 years, you just never saw Johnny ever again.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, because I know he did Letterman, but not Leno.
That was his last TV appearance, was May of 94. And that was at CBS Television City. And Peter LaSalle tried to talk Carson in for weeks to do that. And it was so emotional. It was this, they gave him a top 10 list. And Johnny said, I don't want to really speak. I'll just come out. And he was shocked when he got this standing ovation. And impromptu, Johnny said, can I sit down at the desk? This wasn't planned. He's sitting at the desk. And you can see Johnny try to calm the audience down so he can actually do a line or a joke, which wasn't planned. And the audience just will not let Johnny. I mean, they're so excited that they're hero is right there, that Johnny after a minute just throws up his arms and walks off, and he gets off and he just could not believe the love. I mean, he told Rich Little told me in retirement in Malibu, they ran into each other, and Rich Little told me that Johnny said, Rich, you don't still do me in your act, do you? And Rich is like, what do you mean? It's one of the most popular things I do in my act, of course. And he's like, the people really remember me? I think Johnny had no idea how much he was loved. I mean, to this day, billions of views on YouTube on his clips. His YouTube channel, the official one, has over 1 million subscribers. People miss him. All the late night hosts, they still talk about him. Last night, Paul Anka was recently on Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy asked him about writing the Johnny Carson theme song, and Johnny's name is still to this day makes big headlines. Yeah, and there's a Beatles analogy. It's like they're just doing a version of what the Beatles did. This is what he made this thing. He didn't invent it, but he perfected it. He was great with the real estate, and he was fine to take someone like Rodney Dangerfield, who's a powerhouse, and remove himself, and he did not have to step on the jokes. Let Rodney be funny. I will step back. His number one rule, Peter LaSalle told me, was to make your guests look good. Some of the late night hosts try to outdo the comedians with jokes. Johnny was not insecure like that, and he was fine with letting whoever shine. Yeah. There are late night hosts that have to have the last word all the time. Oh, it's really, Johnny was really good at he was secure enough to, no, you'd be funny. That's fine. And he was curious too. I mean, he would just have organic conversations with people, and the laughs would come. I mean, he inevitably, but yeah, his style and the pace was really, I don't know if it would work today. Certainly it would work as a podcast, but I just think in terms of his likability and in terms of, he knew his viewers. He knew he was just so in tune with the American public, and they for 30 years followed him up until that last night when he said goodbye and broke America's heart. Yeah. We talk about, it is such a window to a time that's gone, and not only in culture, but in
the way we were entertained and the way TV worked and the way show business worked that, I think you and I both have a lot of love for. Alex Sulkin and I have a running thing where we talk about how we miss that there are things that Johnny would have said, phrases that are now in the popular culture that he never got to do. Like, what he would have done with the Kardashians.
Sure.
Or may a crazed web designer log onto your sister's mainframe. There's all these things that he never got to do.
Gosh, that's so funny.
The book's out now.
Yes.
It's called Love, Johnny Carson by Mark Malkoff, Malkohoff. Are you coming out to LA? Are you doing any appearances out here at like books?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope to be out there. I was in Nebraska. I was in Chicago. I was in Johnny's boyhood home, believe it or not, less than a month ago. It was unbelievable to be in that space and really see where this guy grew up. And the owner of the house, a bunch of people like the Smothers Brothers and Dick Cavett and Paul Reiser signed one of the walls, and they had me sign it, which was really a compliment to me. I was grateful. But yeah, I hope to be back in LA. But yeah, I did the audio book also for Audible, which was really scary because I'd never done anything like that. So yeah, the book has been really, really fun. And I just really, one of my questions answered about Carson, and I feel like this is probably the most definitive book on Johnny's Tonight Show from 62 to 92, where I really do answer people's questions about what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's great, and it's such a fun, easy read. It'd be a great gift for somebody to grab. Love, Johnny Carson by Mark Malkoff, Malkoff.
He sits behind his microphone.
Attention disc jockeys. Please note, there are 3 one-minute spots for the exotic ones and 1 30-second spot. When using the 1-minute spots, please rotate from number 1 to number 3. In other words, fellas, use them alternately. Don't stay on just one spot. We would appreciate that very much. Now stand by for your first spot.
Charlie! Will you please hurry? I don't want to be late for the movies tonight.
Okay, sweetheart. What do you want to see? Say, how about seeing that Western playing over the Bijou Theater?
Not me, honey bun. I want to see the exotic one.
But, sweetheart, that one is loaded with sex and violence, with exotic showgirls going berserk when a monster escapes in a New Orleans strip joint. You don't want to see that one.
Yes, I do. And in one scene, the monster pulls a man's arm off and beats him to death with it. I just love that kind of action. I've got to see the exotic one.
But I'm telling you, sweetheart, the exotic ones is loaded with the world's sexiest looking women. Now, you don't want to see that one, do you?
Yes, we do, and we're going to go see it, Charlie Jones, and if you don't want to take me, I'll take a taxi. We're going to see the exotic ones, you hear? And you better
Folks,
wake up to reality.
Don't argue with your wife. Go and see the exotic ones.
And you're not going to have me tell any difference, because I want to see the exotic ones regardless of what you say, and we're going to go.
They're true tales from Weirdsville. Tales from Weirdsville. And they're true.
Can your heart stand the shocking facts?
Brian De Palma was born in 1940 in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. His parents were the children of immigrants. His dad was an orthopedic surgeon, and he and his son did not get along. Brian De Palma's father was an adulterous sort of fella, and at one point in his adolescence, young Brian followed him around with a camera to document said behavior. This event would later become a crucial story point in one of De Palma's later movies. He attended Columbia University in the late 50s and early 60s, majoring in, you guessed it, physics. But then he saw a screening of Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, followed quickly by Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and the filmmaking bug bit. He made his first low-budget feature in 1963. He co-directed it with another guy, and it's called The Wedding Party. And it's a story of a groom on the day of his wedding dealing with his in-laws. It's a sort of a farce. And if you look really closely, if you can find it, you can see a very young, very then unknown Robert De Niro in a small part. Now, the place to be in New York City in the 1960s was down in Greenwich Village, and that's where Brian De Palma went. There was a huge avant-garde film scene down there, and De Palma immersed himself in the works of Michelangelo Antonioni, Jean-Luc Godard, Andy Warhol, who was in his prime at the time, documentary filmmakers like the Males brothers, who would go on to direct Gimme Shelter and Grey Gardens. De Palma made a documentary called The Responsive Eye, which was about a very popular exhibit at the time at the Museum of Modern Art. It was called Op Art, optical art. You know, when you look at a painting and it seems to move and it's not, and you know. And then he made another documentary called Dionysus in '69, which was about a performance of a Euripides play called The Bacchae by an avant-garde theater troupe. Hey man, it was Greenwich Village in the late 60s. We were intellectual, but also freaky. In 1968, De Palma made his first full-length narrative movie. It's called Greetings, this time starring a then young and unknown Robert De Niro, along with two other guys, Jonathan Warden and Garrett Graham. And it is very much influenced by Jean-Luc Godard. It's about three bohemian weirdos wandering around the New York underground in 1969. You know, one is a romantic, one is a would-be pornographer, and one is obsessed with the Kennedy assassination. And basically, the movie is them wandering around, hoping they don't get drafted. He followed that up with another sort of black comedy, a slasher comedy called Murder a la Mode. And then in 1970, he made a movie called Hi Mom, which was, again, a black comedy set in the New York underground, starring Robert De Niro playing the same guy he played in Greetings. So really, Hi Mom was the first film in the Greetings cinematic universe. Now, all of these movies are indie movies. They're underground. They're not making a lot of noise. People out in the real world don't know about them. But in the film world, they were moderately successful financially, and they were very successful critically. And De Palma got the attention of some executives who called him out to the Hollywood. Come on out to the coast. We're going to give you a shot. You're going to make a studio film with Orson Welles. What? Yep, Orson Welles. He's going to be in it. He's not going to direct it. And he's not going to star in it. He's just going to be in it. But he is in it. The star of the film is going to be Tommy Smothers from the Smothers Brothers. And the film would come to be known as Get to Know Your Rabbit. And it's very much of its time. You know, this is 1970, and Tommy Smothers plays a 9-to-5 straight-laced businessman who can't take the rat race. So he drops out and becomes a magician. As I said, Orson Welles is in it, as well as Catherine Ross, who was a huge star at the time, right off The Graduate and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know, it was produced by Warner Brothers. This was a big studio film with big studio stars. But the top liner, Tommy Smothers, and Brian De Palma did not get along. Tommy Smothers did not think he was ready to be directing this film. He spent the entire shoot undercutting De Palma, second-guessing everything he wanted to do. The film was recut, it was reshot. Smothers refused to come back for some of the reshoots. The whole thing was a mess, and eventually it was shelved. It didn't come out until 1972. It didn't do any business, and this turned De Palma off working for the studio system for a good number of years. But he still wanted to direct, so let's make another movie. He didn't want to make a comedy this time, and I can see how fighting with Tommy Smothers for a year of your life would turn anyone off to comedy. But he had an idea. He read an article in Life magazine about two Siamese twins in the Soviet Union, and it gave him an idea for a film that would come to be called Sisters. Now, in the film, Margot Kidder, later Lois Lane in Christopher Reeve's Superman, she plays separated Siamese twins. One is named Danielle, and one is named Dominique. One is a fashion model, and one has an addiction to murder. And Sisters is great. It came out really well. It's a smart, nasty little film. And it's De Palma's first homage to Hitchcock. He would later turn this into his own subgenre. He loved making Hitchcock movies. There's a lot of the film Rope in Sisters. There's a lot of Rear Window. There's a lot of Psycho. I mean, the film has a soundtrack by Bernard Herrmann. He wasn't being subtle about it. But Sisters did well, and De Palma was now considered to be a burgeoning auteur. He was one of the key members of the film brat generation that were depicted in Peter Biskin's book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. That small group of auteurs that revolutionized Hollywood in the late 60s and early 70s. Brian De Palma, Francis Ford Coppola, William Friedkin, Peter Bogdanovich, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and a couple others. And although Sisters did well, what De Palma didn't have yet was a hit. A breakthrough hit. He thought he found one in an idea that was pitched to him by a couple of friends called Phantom of the Fillmore. Now, it was pretty obvious. Great idea, really simple. Phantom of the Opera played out in the rock and roll world of the Fillmore. So they worked on it and they developed it a little bit, and it turned into Phantom of the Paradise. And Phantom of the Paradise is really a mashup of Phantom of the Opera and Faust, because the Phantom and Phantom of the Paradise is not the villain. He's the victim of the villain. The villain is the Satan character in the Faust story. It's the guy that owns the opera, so to speak. The first person that De Palma approached when he wanted to get the movie going was Paul Williams. Now, Paul Williams was a former child actor who, as he got older, became a songwriter. And this is the early 70s. And it was the heyday of the singer-songwriter, James Taylor and Joni Mitchell, heartfelt folks with acoustic guitars. And that's the kind of stuff that Williams wrote. You know, his big hits were for the Carpenters and Helen Reddy. But he did write the songs for Phantom of the Paradise, and he was cast to play not the Phantom, but the villain, the owner of the Paradise, the Satan in the Faust element of the show. Now, Paul Williams is 5'4", and he's kind of boyish in appearance, but that worked because the character is based on Phil Spector, who was 5'5" and boyish in appearance, and by all accounts, a true murderous lunatic. For the character of the Phantom, De Palma went back to his old New York buddies. He hired an actor named William Finley, who was in Dionysus in '69. He's also in Greetings. He's in Sisters. And another guy, another veteran from his earlier films, Garrett Graham, plays the character of Beef, who you just got to see the movie to understand and enjoy Beef. And a then unknown Jessica Harper came in as the object of the Phantom's affection and the object of Paul Williams' obsession. The film was shot, it was completed, and then just before it was ready to be released, they found themselves in a huge legal fight with none other than Led Zeppelin. Yes, the band Led Zeppelin. You see, the rock impresario in the film is named Swan, and his record label is called Swan Song. But that was Led Zeppelin's record label, and they didn't want it in the movie. And so De Palma had to go back in and cut out every depiction of Swan Song, whether it was spoken or shown. So when you watch the film, if you ever see or hear Death Records, that was what they had to shoehorn in at the last minute. And sometimes it's a little obvious. The film was released on Halloween, October 31st, 1974. Other films in theaters at that time included The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Taking of Pelham 123, Airport 75, which stars Charlton Heston's Teeth, It's Alive, The Odessa File, and John Waters' Female Trouble. The first thing you hear in the film is the voice of Rod Serling doing his best impression of Rod Serling introducing an episode of The Twilight Zone. In the early 70s, Rod Serling was the voiceover king, and you would hear him on TV all day long doing all sorts of commercials, and, you know, he was all over the place. You'd just be watching TV. These aren't ordinary Band-Aids. Phantom of the Paradise was not the hit De Palma needed. I think it made its money back. But here's the weird thing. It was a huge monster hit in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Don't ask me why, but it played there nonstop for 2 years. For whatever reason, Winnipeg, Manitoba went nuts for Phantom of the Paradise. Critical reception was good. It wasn't great. People like Vincent Canby and Gene Siskel pointed out that it's hard to get on board with a satire of the music industry since the music industry is kind of a satire of itself in the first place. It did get an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score, and one of the songs, The Hell of It, would become a staple of Paul Williams' live performances. And he would perform them several years later in 1977 on 2 TV specials. I suggest you look them both up. One is The Brady Bunch Hour, which was the Brady Bunch's variety hour that a lot of people forget about, and a TV movie that I do not recall called The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Meet Dracula. Now, my guess is, in real life, Dracula would murder all of them. So I'm going to go try to find this film and see what happens. That said, Phantom of the Paradise never went away, and it later found life in the midnight movie circuit. Now, there have been midnight movies since there have been movies. Starting as far back as the 1930s, there were cinemas that showed films around the clock. In the 1950s, horror and science fiction films were shown at midnight as they were perfect for their intended audience, teenagers with cars. But the midnight movies we're talking about came around in the late 60s and early 1970s. And the epicenter of the midnight movie scene in America was the Elgin Theater in New York City. Sometime around 1969-1970, the Elgin Theater, which was a neighborhood theater in New York, did a midnight run of Kenneth Anger's film Invocation of My Demon. And it did pretty well. And then they ran Alejandro Jodorowsky's surrealistic spaghetti western El Topo. And that became a huge, crazy hit that packed the theater every weekend at midnight. Other movies became popular specifically because they were shown at midnight. John Waters' Pink Flamingos, David Lynch's Eraserhead, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, Peter Bogdanovich's Targets, Hal Ashby's Harold and Maude, the reggae film The Harder They Come, Fritz the Cat, Phantom of the Paradise, and then in 1975, the year after Phantom of the Paradise, the film's spiritual cousin, or some would say its more popular older brother, the King Kong of the midnight movie circuit, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Now, by that time, 76, 77, Brian De Palma had finally gotten his breakthrough hit, the 1976 adaptation of Stephen King's Carrie, and Brian De Palma was off and running. Now, one point about midnight movies. They were made and shown for people who felt that they were outside the mainstream. And so, what was perfect about it, what was beautiful about it, is they were shown outside the mainstream. They were shown in out-of-the-way theaters at out-of-the-way times. It's interesting to note that after he saw El Topo, John Lennon told his then-manager Alan Klein to buy the film. They pulled it out of the Elgin Theater at midnight and put it up in a mainstream cinema on Broadway, running 3 or 4 times a day, and nobody came. Weirdos want to see their weird shit at weird times in weird places. You would think John Lennon would have known that. You'd think a Beatle would have known to let it be. I'll show myself out.
And now, on with the show.
It's a sun-dappled day high atop the Mulholland Drive view shelf in sunny Los Angeles, California, the People's Republic of California, in the former United States. I'm joined by two distinguished gentlemen today who we all share specific affectation in which there are certain movies that ring our bell so deeply that they become a lifelong affectation. Although, John, I don't know yours, but Ari's certainly. My first guest is John Gaspar. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly.
There are two schools on that, my wife's and mine, and you said it my way, so you're fine.
Okay, good. And John is the author of a new book called Held Over, Harold and Maude at the Westgate Theater, which is a beautiful book that tells an incredibly specific story. And it harkens back to something that it's not extinguished from our culture, but it's rare. The neighborhood movie theater that wasn't owned by ginormous conglomerates, and Edina in Minneapolis, the neighborhood of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yes, confusingly, it's in Edina in a neighborhood called Morningside in a neighborhood called the Westgate area.
Right.
So it's Minneapolis, Edina, Morningside, Westgate.
Right. In the 1970s, in the early 1970s, when Mary Tyler Moore was living in Minneapolis, or Mary Richards, I should say,
yes.
The film Harold and Maude played for over 2 years at this one neighborhood movie theater. And John wrote a book about it entitled Held Over, Harold and Maude at the Westgate Theater, because it tells that story and so much more. It is a snapshot of what it was like to be a cinema goer in the early 70s. It was such a different experience than it was now. And if you're a movie fan, it's really an amazing story. And my other guest, so John Gaspar is Ari Khan, and Ari is the executor of the Swan Archives, which is the internet database main source for all things Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's 1974 film, also which, and people don't realize, Phantom of the Paradise came out before Rocky Horror, I believe. And although they're often conflated by people that aren't students of same, in the way that Jaws came before Orca. Ari, you saw, we're all about the same age. You saw Phantom of the Paradise when you were a kid at the movies, and you had no idea what it was.
I had no idea what it was getting into, other than that it was the movie that was playing with Young Frankenstein.
Right. So that is 1974. It was a double bill.
Yeah, early 75. That's right.
And
so
where is this geographically?
This was geographically in the Bay Area. I think it was in a movie theater in a mall, probably in a town called El Cerrito.
Is that where you grew up?
Berkeley. I grew up in Berkeley and Oakland.
Oh, okay.
And Phantom had done its first run in 74, which in that area took about a week. Mm-hmm. And then it came back in early 1975, double billed with Young Frankenstein. And I was dragged along by my mother to see Young Frankenstein because she loved Mel Brooks. And Young Frankenstein was okay. But the B feature, Phantom of the Paradise, really caught my heart. And since you mentioned Planet of the Apes, there is a piece of Planet of the Apes in Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, sure. Well, Paul Williams, or a larger piece.
Well, Paul, the mask that Paul Williams wears at the end to conceal his face was the mask that was used by the prosthetics people to make prosthetics for his face for, I think it was Battle Planet.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, it was his life mask.
Yeah,
okay.
so it was his life mask. So they recycled that.
God bless him.
Which is why the life mask looks so much puffier than his face. He had lost a lot of weight between the two.
There's a lot of apes stuff in from the original film in Lost in Space over the course of Lost in Space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reused appliances, and the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which was placed in front of the camera when they did that crane shot, is in there. So how old? So are you in the Bay Area now?
I'm in Sacramento now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area. Oh, and there's another commonality, which was John Chambers did, of course, the makeup for Planet of the Apes, and is credited for makeup in Phantom of the Paradise, but actually did nothing. They just wanted to use his name because he had won an Oscar.
That's amazing. Now, John, and I'm going to say your names more often than I normally would in the conversation, just so people know who I'm talking to. John, does Harold and Maude, does it resonate with you as much as Phantom resonates with Ari or Apes resonates with me? Or were you more just caught by this strange way that this movie in this very, I mean, you talk about middle America, Edina, Minnesota. And yet Harold and Maude, which Paramount did not know what to do with. It is a strange movie of a love affair between a young kid and an old woman, and Hal Ashby. Mm-hmm. And yet for some reason, 2 year run.
Yes. Well, I think it would have happened somewhere else if it didn't happen here, because it's just too good a movie. It might have happened in a different way, but I don't think today there would ever be a timeline we're on where Harold and Maude wasn't a cult classic. It would have risen up in some way, in the same way that Carnival of Souls eventually rose up. You just can't keep these things down. So the situation was right film, right place, right time. The Westgate was, like many neighborhood movie theaters in 1971/72, kind of on its way out. Multiplexes were beginning to happen. The theater owners were finding it a whole lot more profitable to have 4 movies running with the same amount of staff than 1 movie running. But the Westgate, as had many neighborhood theaters, hung on a little bit because it was a neighborhood theater. You could walk to it and you could see second run movies. They were what were called 28-day theaters. If a movie played somewhere else for 28 days or 28 days ago, you could run it. And it opened in 1935 and kind of just chugged along for 40 years as a neighborhood theater. Never soared, never really died. And then in the late 60s, for some odd reason, the audience took a love of Mel Brooks's The 12 Chairs. And that ran for 12 weeks, which had never happened before, not only at the Westgate, but any theater in Minneapolis. With the exception of Sound of Music, nothing really ran that long. And so the theater guys who ran the theater, General Cinema Corporation, I'm sure you all remember the... Anyway, they noticed that and they thought, oh, odd movie, little theater, runs for a long time, makes us money. So they dropped Where's Papa in there, and Where's Papa ran for 36 weeks. Again, unheard of.
Starring George Siegel's ass.
Yes, and Ruth Gordon.
And Ruth Gordon.
And the great Ron Liebman. Anyway, so when spring of 72 came around, their booker, a guy named Jim Payne, who was a pretty smart guy, looked and went, we got great reviews on Harold and Maude when it played for 2 weeks in downtown Minneapolis around Christmas time, 1971. Great local reviews, raves, really. None of the critics had any problem with it, and they really liked it. However, nobody went.
And a lot of critics hated it.
Some big critics really hated it.
Vincent Canby didn't like it. I don't think Ebert liked it.
Ebert didn't like it originally either. No.
Same with Paradise. I'm assuming we'll get back into that. I'm gonna try to politely ping pong back and forth between the two of you. So
what had happened was Paramount owed all the theaters a big movie for Christmas 1971. They'd all signed up for The Godfather. The Godfather was not ready. So the theaters were stuck with Harold and Maude, which Paramount had no idea how to promote. Peter Bart, who was with Bob Evans, one of the people who ran Paramount, even said, we have no idea how to market this movie.
Famously one of the worst posters of all time.
All time. A tombstone poster, it's called. It's just a couple names on a white background. It's just just terrible. However, it had gotten very good reviews, and the Westgate had gotten a bit of a reputation as being sort of a nursing home for oddball comedies. So they put it in Wednesday, March 22nd. That was back in the day when movies opened on Wednesday. Then they opened on Friday. But at the time, they opened on Wednesday. But what really jump-started it was a column written by a local columnist named Will Jones, who was very influential. He wrote a column 2 days before on Monday saying, I understand that the Harold and Maude is opening at the Westgate. They're running with it a short called Des Douves, which was an Academy Award nominated short that had come out, I think, in 1968. And it's a parody of Ingmar Bergman films in a sort of fake Swedish. It's actually English. It's very funny. It's about 12, 15 minutes long. It's Madeline Kahn's first screen appearance, and it's hysterical. And so the columnist said, I don't know how long this is going to run for, so run while you can and go see Des Douves. And I hear Harold and Maude is good as well. So opens on Wednesday night, nearly sold out. Thursday night, nearly sold out. Friday night, nearly sold out. And it just blossomed from there. They kept selling tickets for over 2 years, and neighbors would complain, and they'd say, why don't you change the movie? Because again, neighborhood theater mentality. Every week I can go to a different movie.
Right.
I can't
and
do
people
that
have to realize this is before VHS.
Yes.
This is before home box office. This is, a world away from streaming. If you wanted to see a movie, it had to be playing in the theater. And if that movie left the theater, you were SOL.
Absolutely. You would never be able to see it again. Or maybe you'd see it on TV all chopped up. And so as a film person myself, I was excited to see it. I'd heard things. I went and saw it on a Saturday night, sold out crowd. Went back the next day because I had missed half of it from the laughter. And over the next 2 years, I got sort of the reputation as the guy who goes and sees Harold and Maude. Not as much as the super fan who saw it over 170 times.
And ended up becoming friends with Ruth Gordon.
Right to her death. Yeah, it's a very sweet story.
Yeah.
So,
dare I say, similar to the film.
And he's not unaware of that.
Yes. Well, I've had that experience. I have had that experience myself. And I wonder about Ari, to ping pong back. Ari, as I want to get into your first experience with Phantom going with your mom, but do you have a relationship now with Paul Williams? I've seen that you appeared with him at several functions and stuff. Are you pen pals? Are you email pals? Or
I made the fan to friend transition with Paul and a number of other members of the cast, because we have done events together and commentary tracks, and I directed all of the supplemental features on the Blu-ray, and we spent time together. And now
that must have been quite a day when you realized that there's going to be a DVD of Phantom of the Paradise and your name is in the credits.
Yeah. And then, there was Phantom Palooza 2, which I produced along with a couple folks from Winnipeg, which reunited the cast. Interviewing De Palma for the Blu-ray was both a high and low point of my life. And, but then I redeemed myself, by finding the footage that had been deleted from the film before it was released against his wishes, and restoring it and putting it back together for him, which made him and a bunch of other people happy. But sorry, what was the question?
Well, I don't want to just hear high and low point and skate off that, but I want to give a little bit of, for people that don't know these movies, let's do a little quick rundown biography. Phantom of the Paradise. Sure. Brian De Palma, who's a huge director. I think people most know him from, I guess, Carrie, and then The Untouchables, and he was one of that.
Well, Scarface, Mission Impossible.
But all of these. I mean, but Carrie was the one I think that was his first
on the map.
Yeah. And he was also a part of that. George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Francis Coppola, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls class of auteurs, early 70s auteurs. I believe he is the reason we have the crawl at the opening of Star Wars, because he saw it rough cut and said to George Lucas, I have no idea who any of these people are. I have no idea what's going on. and that's why the crawl went into Star Wars. Did he write? And Phantom of the Paradise is basically, for people who haven't seen it, Rock and Roll Phantom of the Opera. Would that be the elevator pitch?
That would be the elevator pitch.
Right.
Yes.
It has I don't know if it's the film or the trailer is narrated by Rod Serling.
Yeah, the introduction to the film is narrated by Rod Serling. The trailers were sadly narrated by Wolfman Jack in first release, which was just awful. I think everybody at that point in time recognized him as sort of the character he plays in American Graffiti is kind of a fraud, and you can't really believe anything he says. Well, so when he's endorsing a film, that doesn't count for much.
My friend is making a documentary about Wolfman Jack, oddly enough, and he tells me this one story of a guy who's working at Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard. Wolfman Jack comes in with a young lady on his arm and goes through the records, and they get this like 2-foot stack of LPs, and this guy's like, "Oh my God, Wolfman Jack's here in the store." And he walks up to the cash register, he rings up the records, and he goes, gives him the amount of money, and Wolfman Jack takes out a checkbook and starts writing a check, and he doesn't want to be rude, so he looks away while he's writing the check, and as he looks away, he sees a note under the counter that says, "Do not accept checks from Wolfman Jack." He wrote the film. He had done some. He wasn't a nobody at this point.
No, he had done Sisters, which was a very well regarded sort of Hitchcock riff that got him tagged as a Hitchcock copyist.
Not his last Hitchcock riff. And Margot Kidder is in Sisters, correct?
Margot Kidder, who he was dating at the time, was in Sisters, and
William Finley.
And William Finley,
who he was also dating at the time.
but he had also made 3 films with Robert De Niro. He had made The Wedding Party and Greetings and Hi Mom, and Hi Mom in particular is terrific.
Right.
And then nobody wants to talk about Get to Know Your Rabbit for good reason.
Everybody
with Orson Welles and Tommy Smothers.
Yeah.
And is it true that
they're
De Palma
7th film together?
is it true that De Palma introduced De Niro to Scorsese?
There's the Scorsese documentary that came out recently seemed to tell a slightly different story from that, but that's the story that I've always been heard. And as well as he gave Scorsese the Taxi Driver script when he decided that it wasn't for him.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I always thought the weird thing about Taxi Driver was the scene that Scorsese is in and what his dialogue is in that scene. That he thought, my parents are going to come to see this movie. I should be in it just so they can see me on the screen. Oh, I'll do this part.
Well,
my mom can say, "That's my boy."
That part had been originally was going to be played by George Memley, who played Philbin in Phantom. And George, I think because of the accident he had making The Farmer, was not able to do it. And so Scorsese stepped in to play the role at relatively the last minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it was just like, somebody's going to do this. Might as well be me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mom, I want my mom to see me may also be an element of that story.
John, how old were you when you first saw Harold and Maude?
I think I was probably 13.
Okay.
I was in 9th grade.
9th grade. Well, I guess because that's about the age I saw. I was a little bit older when I started this. I'm trying to think of when I saw Manhattan, which was my first movie for adults that a kid can pretend he understands.
Yeah, it's probably closer to 77 for Manhattan.
Yeah, Manhattan came out in 79.
79.
So I was 15. I was 15.
Okay.
And Ari, how old were you when you saw Phantom?
So I would have been 12.
12. So that is, it's also early for, I'm surprised that you're 12 years old and Young Frankenstein didn't ring your bell. Cause I saw Young Frankenstein in 75 and I was 11 and and I remember my group of friends, the whole movie was, "What big knockers. Thank you, doctor." We couldn't, oh my God. That was just blew our minds apart.
If it hadn't been immediately followed by Phantom, it probably would have been a lot more impressive for me. I mean, I love Young Frankenstein to this day, to be honest.
Sure, it's hard not to love.
Yeah, but Phantom imprinted on me like a mother duck or something.
And to this day, do you know why?
I think it was a combination of the way it looked, all the colors, the music, which was obviously terrific. I'm pretty sure the first time that it really registered for me that these movies come from someone's mind. There's someone behind the camera, because the camera moves so sort of ostentatiously in Phantom. It makes its presence known. And that was impressive to me. And I'm sure there was also an element of identifying with Winslow. And if only the girls in class could hear my true inside talent and feelings and music, everyone would love me. And,
Yeah, that's a universal, especially, and boy, you are at the right age for that. Like that's
exactly.
The other strange thing about Phantom, in addition to having a major character named Beef, which is not since I think Hamlet has there been a prominent character named Beef, but it I don't know if it predates Kiss, but basically the undead are doing Kiss before Kiss was Kiss. I mean, I think Dressed to Kill came out in 72 or 3, but they weren't Kiss.
No, it was very simultaneous. There's a whole page on my website with the chronology of the undead and Kiss, and it's clear that nobody involved with Phantom had seen Kiss, but it's also clear that the Kiss was not inspired by the undead.
No, it's just I think it's called
it was in the air.
Yeah, 100th monkey syndrome, where everybody gets the same idea at the same time. Everybody gets the same idea at the same time. And did you and John, what was it about Harold and Maude that resonated with you?
It was funny. Harold's 19, I would have been 13.
And at 13, John had a thing for much, much older women.
Yes, but she was 65 and not 79. Yeah. So, it's not crazy.
Running home from school to watch Murder, She Wrote.
Everybody had an Angela Lansbury poster in their room. No, I think in looking back on it, which I did when when this book came to me and I was examining why do I want to talk about this 2 years, the next year I would go into high school, but I was also going into a essentially half-day filmmaking program every day for 3 years. So I'd do normal high school in the morning and filmmaking in the afternoon. It was something that was very interesting to me up to that point. I was making Super 8 movies.
This is in Minneapolis?
Yeah. I was doing G.I. Joe stuff, animating them and setting them on fire and all that. So I was very interested in filmmaking. And
as well you should.
Well, and although I was later in my high school years in a film program, I was in a film program in the 70s in which film was a method of personal self-expression. And it wasn't about telling stories, and it wasn't about getting coverage, and it wasn't about, will this cut with that? I got none of that education in that program. I got a lot of free film and a lot of freedom to do stuff, but not a lot of film teaching. However, watching Harold and Maude a lot over 2 years is a film education, because Al Ashby had started as an editor and then became a director. This was his second movie as a director. And he was a brilliant editor and brilliant director. And if you look at the movie from that point of view, you can learn a lot about when to cut out of a scene, when to cut into a scene, when to go from something quiet to something loud, when to go from something bright to something dark, which you don't think about today watching something at home on TV. But if you're in a dark theater and there's a dark scene and suddenly the next scene is very bright, everybody in the theater's eyes react to that. And that's the sort of stuff that he knew. He knew how to do a montage. He knew how to work with music. And it just felt like a 2-year film school.
He edited In the Heat of the Night, did he not?
He did, and won an Academy Award for it.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then what was for Hal Ashby's, I guess, was Shampoo probably his biggest?
Probably his biggest moneymaker, or maybe Being There.
Oh, did he made Being There, of course.
He made Being There, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that might have been his most successful film, I think.
Sure.
Wasn't
I was just talking about
Coming Home was his as well, but I don't think it was as successful as Being There was.
Yeah, Coming Home came out the same year as The Deer Hunter, and it was sort of the yin and yang of. I do remember. I'm talking about Being There on a podcast later this month. Strangelove and Being There for the New Beverly Cinemas podcast, and interesting story about Being There is, Being There ends with outtakes, and he didn't want to do it, and Sellers overruled him under the premise that everybody walks out of my movies laughing, and they don't belong there.
No, they don't. And oddly enough, I saw Being There for the first time in LA when it was just to come out, and it did not have the outtakes and the credits.
Oh, that's great.
Which might have been because it was up for Academy consideration, and they just went, "We're not gonna goof around with this."
Did you ever Ashby? When did Ashby pass?
Mid '80s, late '80s, I think.
Yeah. Did you ever talk? Did you ever speak with him or interview him?
Nope, never got to.
But you interviewed Brian De Palma, Ari, and apparently it was wonderful. Apparently it was wonderful.
It was a mixed bag, but before we get there, we hold people in suspense. I'm pretty sure Phantom was the first film to use outtakes over the closing credits. Someone's going to write in and tell me I'm wrong. But virtually all of the shots that we see at the end, which are all fairly happy shots after a very gloomy finish, were outtakes that Paul Hirsch chose to stick in to give us a retrospective of the various characters. So Swan splashing in the tub and so on, which you don't see in the film.
And, there was a credit at the end that said montage by Paul Hirsch. And because it's the day that it is now where we can talk to these people, Paul is on Facebook, and I wrote him a little note saying, "I've always enjoyed that, and I'm glad you got a credit for it." And he wrote back and said, "That's not what the credit's for.
That's not
the credit for the montage in the middle of the movie over music while there's lighting candles, and it's the finishing of the cantata sequence." And he edited that, never being able to see how it was going to come out until the film was done. Because back at that time, you're working with film, you're using A/B rolls and doing crossfades and things, and you had to time everything out, and did not see it until the movie was done. And it's a beautiful montage, and he certainly deserves that credit. But I had no idea that was the one he was talking about, because the one at the end is fantastic.
And he also... I'm sorry, go ahead, Ari.
I was just saying that montage is part of what was trashed when the film was mutilated prior to release because of the swan song Led Zeppelin claims. And it's part of what's now restored.
Yeah, I will have to kick Brian De Palma's can even further down the road, because people don't realize there's two things about Phantom of the Road. One, it uses a lot of split screen, which I think people mostly equate with Woodstock, the doc, when they would, you'd have several different screens on the one image instead of cutting. And De Palma uses that in Phantom.
And quite a bit in Sisters as well.
Sisters, yeah.
Oh, I did. I have to see.
And Carrie,
Carrie.
When
Carrie as well.
Carrie loses her shit, that all goes to split screen. Yeah.
No, there's a terribly
It's very of its time.
It
was a big deal.
I think it's most successful in Sisters.
Mm-hmm. It's very suspenseful in Sisters, because they're trying to clean up a murder, and you're seeing someone coming to the site, and you see both things at once, and it's beautifully done for a low budget movie. It's really well done, and
it's also evocative of the film. Two halves of one.
Yep.
Yeah. It's thematically consistent. Why did the Paul Williams plays Swan. What's his first name? Craig?
He has no first name.
He's just Swan. And he's sort of, for people unfamiliar with the film, Swan is sort of a, what's the name of the...
Like a Phil Spector kind
Phil
of
Spector,
producer.
Thank you. Yeah. Like a Phil Spector, non-murderous Phil Spector-like producer, who's like the king of, and as Rod Serling says, he brought the blues to England. He brought Liverpool to America. He's the most powerful music force in the world. And he opened, but it's all coming down to, and what do you do when you have all the power in the world? What is the ultimate expression of that? Open your own nightclub, which doesn't, it seems a little counterintuitive. I want to get into selling liquor. But he opens this club, and he basically finds a guy to write music that he's going to take credit for, and he's horribly mangled. It's Phantom of the Opera.
Well, he's Satan, and so he's opening this ironically named club, the Paradise, to corrupt as many innocent souls as possible.
There's a million college essays that could be written about all the references in Phantom of the Paradise.
But unfortunately, Swan and his what was it called? Swan Song? Was that the what was the how did Led Zeppelin how does Led Zeppelin figure into this?
Well, it all starts with Les Harvey being electrocuted on stage in 1972, a couple of years before Phantom came out.
And Les Harvey was a guitarist for
Stone the Crows, which was a band that was being managed by Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant. And he and Les Harvey were fairly close. And when Peter Grant heard that there was a film coming out that had an electrocution of a rock star on stage, he naturally assumed that what was being made fun of was the death of his friend, Les Harvey, when in fact, De Palma had written Beef's death scene, sorry, spoilers, folks, into scripts well before what happened to Les Harvey. So this is more life imitating art than the other way around. But anyway,
the term cooked beef comes to mind.
Yes.
And it is given away in the trailer as well.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. I'm not spoiling it for anybody.
The shark doesn't win either, just so you know.
So Peter Grant was determined to stop the release of this film any way he could. And as a matter of sheer coincidence, between the time that Phantom was shot and the Swan Song name was all over everything, because Swan narcissistically put his name on everything he touched. Between the time the film was shot with all of the Swan Song footage and the time the film was released, during that summer, by sheer total stupid coincidence, Led Zeppelin and Peter Grant got a trademark in the name Swan Song for their record label. So as soon as that trademark issued, Peter Grant realized what he had, and he went to Fox, who had just bought the film at auction. It was independently produced. Ed Pressman, the producer, and Brian De Palma raised the money, hoping that they would be able to sell it to a studio when they were done, because everybody had chased them out the door when they went to pitch it. So Peter Grant went to Fox and said, "You can't release this film. It's got my trademark all over it." And Fox turned around and said to Brian De Palma and Ed Pressman, "You need to solve this problem." And the only solution, this was like around a month before the film was to be released, was to either cut around all of the Swan Song stuff or cover it with other things, which is why you see a bunch of ugly mats in the film, particularly at the podium at the airport, where you see this sort of dead sparrow spastically hopping up and down, covering up a Swan Song label. Anyway, so the film was mangled and was never seen the way that it was intended to be seen for almost 50 years.
Did they call it Undead Record? Did they change the name of it? Or
to Death Records.
Death Records. Right.
Yeah. I mean, there had been Death Records footage in the film originally, but Death Records got accentuated and Swan Song disappeared. But it's not just a matter of one thing gets covered over with another. Who really cares? It's one logo being replaced by another. It also meant that a bunch of really beautiful crane shots and transition shots and other things where you just couldn't remove Swan Song had to be removed.
Yeah, it's sort of like if a month before Jaws came out, somebody said, "Oh yeah, you can't use orca." So, and you can't say orca, you can't see the word. It doesn't affect the story, but it's going to fuck up the movie so much. That's one of the many, many headaches of trying to do anything.
Yes.
I just have to say that if anyone ever gets a chance to see the version that Ari fixed, where he put those shots back in, when I saw it at the 50th anniversary screening in Dallas at the theater where it was shot. And when that first sweeping crane shot that none of us had ever seen before appeared on screen, the entire theater erupted. We were just so thrilled to see that shot had finally been fixed. And in the end, I think there's a whole episode of Big Bang where there's an extra 12 seconds of a movie that they're going to go see, and Penny can't figure out why they're so excited. I don't know how many extra seconds you added, Ari, but for the true fan, it was like, oh my goodness, we just found a brand new clean print of London After Midnight. This is amazing. And to the average person, it's like, what? There's a couple shots. So what? Relax.
Right.
So it is time. It is time to find out about your interview with Brian De Palma.
Oh, well, it's going to, now at this point, it's going to be a disappointing story. So, Brian De Palma does not generally do a lot of interviews about things other than what he just worked on. He's never done a commentary track, for example. He's very sort of forward-looking. That's done. It's behind me. And I was shocked when he agreed to sit down with me. And I had to go to New York to do this. He chose a hotel that was conveniently down the street from his apartment because,
that's how it works.
He's going to make everything convenient for him. But I had no idea whether I had 10 minutes with him, an hour with him, 3 hours. And I didn't get any sleep the night before, obviously, because you don't. And he showed up right on time. And my concern was I wanted to get him out of there as quickly as I could, because even then he was an older guy and I didn't know how much time he was going to give me. So as he was answering questions, I was leafing through my notes looking for where I wanted to go from here. And I was in every way a bad interviewer, and I could feel myself being a bad interviewer as this thing was progressing. And I could hear myself asking him questions that prompted yes or no answers, which would never be usable for anything, because when you're interviewing somebody for something like that, you have to say, could you talk about this? So you can get some, some verbiage. And he wasn't doing a whole lot to help me out. He was very generous with his time. It ended up being something like 3 hours, which we shortened to around 25 minutes in the cut. But I just felt like I was doing something that I was not at all good at doing. It's, when the first person you're directing is Brian De Palma, there's just no way to step up, to that task. And in the end, we got good stuff. I think it's a reasonable supplemental feature. But I just felt like I looked like a dope. And so it was even more gratifying when a few years later, I was able to provide him with his film, which he had never known. Everyone had assumed that this footage had disappeared or been destroyed or lost 40 or 50 years ago. And so it came as a surprise to him and to the editor and to the producer that it could be put back together. And he was very happy to see it the way that he had meant it to be. So I felt a little redeemed there. I got a nice note from him.
And that's you kind of bearing the lead. You took it upon yourself to restore this film, in addition to just the years of detective work and archaeology, the technical know-how that you had to have availed yourself to. It's no small task.
I honestly can't take credit for that. The archaeology and the detective work that it took to find the footage, yes, I will take full credit. But the majority of the physical work of putting it together, I mean, I knew where all the bits should go, but taking the little specks out and matching the pixels and so on was done by a guy named Will Martin, who was a friend of mine in Berkeley. And he and I had watched someone else's attempt to do this using footage from the Blu-ray, and we were both pretty disgusted with it. And thought, this is something that needs to be done right. Let's collaborate on this. But I have to give him full credit for the sort of very patient work of actually matching things and that. Also, the one piece of footage that I couldn't find, because I think they destroyed the negative to do it, was actually that scene at the airport with the spastic bird. And Steve Rosenbaum, who's a special effects supervisor, he won Oscars for Avatar and Forrest Gump. He agreed. I showed him what the scene's supposed to look like, because there's a still that shows what the podium is supposed to look like. And he reconstructed that for me.
But also, the other thing you did that hadn't even occurred to me was when you're adding, like, for example, that opening crane shot, you're adding X amount of seconds to the film. You also had to deal with how do you expand the sound to fill what is now an empty gap.
Right.
Well, the crane shot, you're not actually adding time. You're eliminating something that would otherwise have been shown. But because it would have had more of the juicy fruits dancing for a second or so. Okay. But yeah, there are scenes where you have to decide, are we going to, if a scene gets a few seconds longer and there's music underlying that scene, are you going to slow the music down? Are you going to loop it? Are you going to start the music a little bit later? Are you going to use the music from somewhere else in the film and put it back where it belongs? So there's some aesthetic stuff to do, but it wasn't a lot.
But there's a fundamental difference between these two films. Is like Harold and Maude, you know exactly what it's doing. It knows what it is, and it's you're gonna like it or not. When it comes to Phantom of Paradise, with Beef specifically, like, is the film laughing at Beef, or is the audience laughing at Beef? Are we, I can't believe I've finally been able to ask that question.
Well, I can tell you that, the Winnipeg fans,
Winnipeg is...
We'll get there. That's its own thing. But
Winnipeg is to Phantom of the Paradise what Edina is to Harold and Maude.
Yep.
But they totally buy into Beef is righteous and awesome and music. And it would appall them that somebody thought there was something to laugh at in terms of Beef's musical performances. Even though we understand that the Phantom is kind of disgusted by him.
Mm-hmm.
They think he's Kiss and Led Zeppelin rolled into one.
Right. He's larger than life. And,
yes.
And that fits as our rock stars, but that was, I'm wondering, like, in the direction of that, is De Palma like bigger, or if it's,
I'm going to go with that was entirely Garrett Graham, who played Beef, he's got less than 15 minutes of screen time in that film, including his musical performances, and yet so memorable, so much, as you say, so much bigger than life.
Yeah. He reminds me of Charles Napier is who I'm thinking.
Charles Napier. Okay. Because he ends up in, like Philadelphia. He is the guy in just about every Jonathan Demme movie.
Yeah. That's why he's in Philadelphia.
He's crucified in Silence of the Lambs.
Gremlins.
He's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, he's in The Last Embrace, which is a Hitchcockian thing that Jonathan Demme did that didn't get a lot of wide release with Roy Scheider and Janet Margolis in it. He is the bad guy in that, and is very funny as the bad guy.
Did Garrett Graham, did he go on? Did he have a...
Well, you'll see him in Used Cars. He's very funny in that.
Which is a really funny movie. So you mentioned Winnipeg. There's a strange connection between this film and Winnipeg, Ari.
Yeah, Winnipeg is one of the places. There were actually several. El Salvador, it was also huge, but Winnipeg was somewhere where Phantom took off and was bigger than Jaws and played for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the fandom just held there. And everyone asked why Winnipeg and why not everywhere else. And I think the right question is, well, why wasn't it everywhere else? But the Winnipeg phenomenon, I believe, was triggered by the fact that Phantom was advertised heavily on television in Winnipeg during children's after-school shows, Woody Woodpecker and that kind of thing. Whereas virtually everywhere else, the promotion for Phantom was mostly handled by A&M Records. And A&M promoted it as if it was a music product with magazine coverage and radio coverage, which is not the way to sell that movie. You sell it by the way that it looks and the colors and the Phantom's outfit and so on. And Winnipeg almost uniquely got that saturation advertising. So the 10 to 12-year-olds in Winnipeg went in droves. And if you go to Phantom events now in Winnipeg, almost everybody there is exactly the same age. They're all the people who are watching this after school shows, plus they're bringing their children now.
Right.
So Winnipeg has, loved Phantom all this time. And in 2005, they did an event called Phantom Palooza, where they invited William Finley to come and come to a screening and do a Q&A. And he convinced Garrett Graham to go with him. So that was quite the event. And I went to that. I went a few days early and
we should William Finley. William Finley plays Winslow,
the Phantom.
who is the Phantom.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm forgetting that people don't have context because, of course, it's permeates my life.
Of course.
Why shouldn't it permeate everyone's?
Something I did not know about William Finley. William Finley is absolutely one of those actors you don't know as the average person goes, I don't know. And then you see his face and go, oh yeah, that guy. I've seen that guy and everything. 6'4".
Yeah.
Huge guy. And Paul Williams,
5'4".
Yeah, probably a full foot shorter.
Yeah.
You know who also was 5'4"? Rod Serling and Charles Manson. The big three.
It's probably going to turn out that Phil Spector was also 5.
Phil was tiny. I'm sure he was tiny. He certainly had tiny man's issues. Did Rocky Horror, because both films didn't do well on first release. They're both kind of panned. And Phantom is connected. Phantom and Rocky Horror are connected in people's minds. I think
they are.
70s, mid 70s, rock, musical, flamboyant, sort of not prog rocky, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, they were musicals, but they weren't. It's not your traditional stage musical type of music.
Right.
Yeah, it was more modern music. But, Phantom was not, other than a few people who were not critics, but who played critics on TV, like Rex Reed and Gene Siskel. Phantom got a lot of really very positive press coverage, but you couldn't persuade people to see it from the promotion. I think Rocky was more universally panned, though I could be wrong about that, by the critical establishment when nobody understood what it was trying to do.
I love when a movie is panned and then it becomes a giant hit, and then the critic reappraises it. There's a lot of those, a lot of late, in September of 1977, a lot of people went, I went back to Star Wars and I think I see what yeah, you just were wrong.
Yeah. Someone even did that with 2001. They published the pan, and then a week later they came back and said, you know what? I'm an idiot.
That's probably the best example is 2001, that everybody was like, it's so slow. And it found, that as that movie found its audience. Its audience wasn't the people that went to see Dr. Strangelove. Its audiences were kids and drugs kids in college gobbling drugs. That's why the tagline was changed to The Ultimate Trip, because they wanted to get the acid heads into the theater. Now Harold and Maude had a theatrical life after the film. It was a Broadway play, or
yes. The writer of it, Colin Higgins, did a play version of it, which was done in Paris and was very successful with an aging Parisian actress who was well loved in France. And it was kind of rethought out by her director, and it was a big hit there. It also did go to Broadway, went away very, very quickly. They did a musical version of it. That went away as well. It is still done as a play occasionally, but it's a tough thing to stage because it opens with someone hanging themselves. When Colin Higgins wrote it, he wrote it as his thesis in film school, and it was a short. And it was Harold and Maude. And that's what it was about. It was about Harold and Maude. And his landlady read it. Her husband was a producer, and she said, this will be a feature, just expand it. And so he added in 3 computer dates, and he added in running in with the police, and he added in an uncle and a priest and a psychiatrist. And if you really watch the movie, you can see that structure of it was just Harold and Maude. Harold meets Maude, and then the end comes, and it's a 30-minute short. You can see how these other things were dropped in. So it's very cinematic.
And the 30-minute short was expanded from a single shot.
Yes, he envisioned the whole thing from the opening shot. This is such a film geek thing. When you do your thesis film at UCLA, you're given a very small budget at that time. I'm not sure what they're doing now. And he saw that he could get a really cool dolly for $50 a day. And the dolly would start at 9 inches off the floor, and then it could roll across the floor, and it could go up to 9 feet. And so he envisioned what is the opening shot of Harold and Maude. It's exactly as he originally wrote it. You see some feet. We follow the feet across the room. We're dolling with them. He writes some things. He lights some candles. He gets up on a chair. He kicks the chair out from underneath him, and the camera goes up and around him, and you see that he's hung himself. That was the beginning of Harold and Maude. And all the humor in it came from him going, well, what would be the funniest thing? Well, the funniest thing is if he stood on a stool and kicked it out from underneath him. Well, what happens then? Well, then someone comes in and she screams. Well, what would be funnier if she didn't scream? What if she said, oh, I suppose you think that's very funny? And that was where the tone came, but it was all in that first shot. And when he tried to turn it into a play, it's so cinematic that it's very hard to make all those scene changes and do all that stuff. And you don't have the advantage of close-ups, and you also don't have, you don't have Hal Ashby directing it. You don't have Ruth and Bud playing it, and you don't have the Cat Stevens music. And those are the things that audiences responded to.
No, it was absolutely, both films are very much, glam rock was the phrase I was looking for.
There you go.
They're both very, very much of their time. They are a snapshot of their time. I was, my friend Heidi Holliker is in Valley Girl. She's one of the friends in Valley Girl. And I was explaining to somebody, if you don't know what it's like to be a teenager in your early 20s in the early 1980s, you watch that, and that will tell you what it was like. It was over before the decade was out, but that was it. And that movie is so There are some movies that are kind of timeless.
Mm-hmm.
And these are, no, this is the early 70s. This is mid 70s. That's early 80s. And you can feel it in your chest.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it in your chest when you watch those films. Has anybody ever tried to make a stage presentation of Phantom of the Paradise?
It's been in the works for decades, and there have been rights issues, which now finally, Ed Pressman was the original producer. He passed away. His son runs his company now, and Sam, bless his heart.
Is that Avco Embassy?
No, it's Pressman Film.
Okay.
Sam has finally resolved these rights issues, and Paul Williams and a writer are hard at work getting this thing ready for production.
Oh, that's wonderful. Paul Williams was, he's really, I was going to say that there should be a documentary made about him, but there is. My friend Steve Kessler made it. He's a really fascinating guy. He's as funny as any stand-up comedian, as fast.
Funnier than many.
Funnier than many, agreed. Also, a really good actor. And he was a songwriter, but he was not writing the kind of songs that Swan wrote. He wrote Evergreen and The Rainbow Connection. Like, he wrote these very sweet early 70s singer-songwriting kind of songs. Then he became Pat McCormick's comedy partner. And now he's the head of ASCAP. Like, he's got a real job. I've met him a couple of times. He's a really impressive guy, and he's also one of these guys. He's in his 80s now, and he looks great. He's healthy as an ox. He's a real force of nature. Was jogging around the Hollywood Reservoir, and he was jogging in the other direction. And as I saw him approach, I just said, we were both running, and I went, my parents took me to the drive-in to see Battle for the Planet of the Apes when I was 9 years old, and I loved it. And he went, yes! Like, he held his hands like that. But what was beautiful about it was neither one of us stopped. We just didn't try to ruin it. Nope, that was it. We're done. That's all we need. Then my friend Wayne Fetterman knows Paul, and they did a Christmas show at Largo. And I do this thing, Ari, you might not know about this. I do this thing called Hanging with Dr. Z, which is a talk show.
I'm well aware.
Okay,
yes.
I wasn't sure. So I was in that makeup, and Paul was on the show. And he walked past me in the corridor. Neither one of us stopped. I thought he was going to go like, what? Oh my God. Like, I was really, and he just looked at me and without breaking stride said, very hard to do cocaine in that, and kept walking, which is a testament to how funny he was. And then here's the weirdest one. I was at the Who at the Hollywood Bowl with Bobcat Goldthwait, and literally just turned around and he was sitting right behind us. We talked to him the whole night. And, William Finley doesn't get the credit that he deserves, because it's hard to carry a movie, and it's hard to carry a movie with half your face hid, with half your face hid, and a mechanical, like, he does an amazing job with that film.
There's a lot of great eye acting.
Yes.
He does. And you turn around on his character. He starts off as this nebbishy nerd, and by the end, you're absolutely rooting for him. And the rooting for, I mean, that's another difference between, you were talking earlier about Rocky and Phantom, and Rocky Horror doesn't ask you to take its story or its characters seriously. I mean, I don't think anybody watches Rocky Horror and then is worried about whether Brad and Janet will get together after get back together after their ordeal.
Yeah.
And Phantom kind of daringly, I think, is telling this satirical story, but also at the same time asking you to be bereft at the end when Winslow dies, just as Phoenix realizes what he's done for her, and so on. It's a tightrope.
And De Palma is not known for having films with a lot of heart in them. And that one and Carrie both have a lot of emotion in their climaxes.
And Casualties of War and Blowout, I would say, too.
Yes.
It's funny because John, you were an usher at the theater, correct?
I was an usher at the Westgate after Harold and Maude left.
Right.
But so I have that unique usher experience.
Yeah, I was an usher. And I
was an usher.
Really?
Yeah.
Where were you?
UC Theater in Berkeley.
Sure.
The Act 1, Act 2 in Berkeley. The Grand Lake in Oakland.
Wow. I was an usher during Blowout.
Wow.
And I remember years later seeing Blow Up, going, "Oh, wait a minute, this is that movie." I know this story.
And it's not going to end well for him either.
No, yeah. Is De Palma happy with the movie?
With Phantom?
Yeah.
My sense is very much so. Yeah. Or he would not be willing to sit down with someone and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a unique sidebar to what Ari did. And I don't know if there's another director who's had this done twice. But De Palma's film Raising Cain, there's a filmmaker in Europe named Pete Gelderblom who got a hold of the script for Raising Cain and read it and went, "Oh, the movie's all jumbled up. It should follow the script." And he took the film and put it in the right order, an order that I believe they called Paul Hirsch in late in editing Raising Cain. They were just having problems with it. And to this day, he said he didn't think it makes any sense. But Pete put the film in the correct order that was written in the script. And somehow that got to De Palma, and De Palma stopped the production of the Blu-ray of Raising Cain and said, "I want this on there as well." And he calls it the director's cut because Pete pretty much figured out how to put everything in the right order and have it make sense.
Wow. So the
studio
just stepped in, even I guess he doesn't have Final Cut.
I don't think it was a case of the studio stepping in. It was De Palma just couldn't figure out with the editors how to make it work once he shot it.
So he did it. He
did it, but he was never happy with it. And
that's interesting. That's really interesting.
It's what he was attempting to do, and then changed his mind. Was he was attempting to do Psycho, that structure, where there's a big twist 30 minutes in, and
switch to a new lead character.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was a test audience or what happened, but he chickened out and made it he put some of the most dramatic stuff right up front and sort of destroyed that structure. And what Gelderblom did was put it together. And it is, I think, a better version of the movie.
It's interesting. I'm a bigger fan of the 3-hour fan edit of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me than I am of the theatrical release. And I know I'm in the minority, and I know David Lynch had his opportunity to release it that way. And he was like, "Nope, it is what it is."
Yep.
But
they didn't have a Robert Evans there telling them, "No, you got to be able to smell the spaghetti."
So
Twin Peaks so much better with Jar Jar Binks removed.
So you have you have the Swan Archives, which is describe the Swan Archives for people. And then I'm gonna ask you a question that you probably get all the time.
Sure. So the Swan Archives is a obsessive compulsive website devoted to Phantom of the Paradise. That's arranged like a rabbit warren that tries to be, everything and anything about the film. And it's arranged like a rabbit warren just because it was built over time, and like the Winchester Mystery House or something, little things were added here and there.
Good analogy.
It is the result of my having collected stuff related to Phantom of the Paradise since I was a kid, because as you mentioned, there was no VHS back then. You couldn't see things whenever you wanted. You had to wait for them to come back to the theater. And so there was no way to stay connected to a film you loved other than finding posters and other ephemera related to it And when Phantom Palooza happened, and I discovered that I was not the only fan of this film in the world, it made sense to throw it up on the web and share it and try to write some narrative around it.
Right. And I'm sure, because I get this with Planet of the Apes, where people just, everyone knows that you like it and people just send you stuff all the time. And I'm like, please stop. Please. No, I have it. And also I have 3 kids who live in this house and they have no interest in it at all. And they should not have to be eyeball deep in Dad's weirdness. It's all in the garage.
I totally get that. But when the people who start sending you stuff are crew and folks like that, who have unique items, like, one of my favorite, probably my favorite movie poster is that movie poster for Phantom, the first one, which is the same as what's on the album cover. And that poster has followed me throughout my life in every dorm room and every room I've rented and every house I've ever lived in. And at some point, John Alvin, who painted that poster, said to me, I have something you think you ought to have. And he sent me his original painting. And that doesn't happen.
No, I have a couple of those things too. And he went on to be a big poster guy. He went on to be huge.
Yeah, his first jobs in the industry were Blazing Saddles and then Phantom of the Paradise and then Young Frankenstein. And you can see a lot of similarities between the Phantom and the Young Frankenstein posters he did. But then, he did E.T. and something like 150 other films. He and Drew Struzan, I think, sort of dominated in the 70s and 80s. And
Drew just passed.
90s. Yes, he did.
Drew just passed.
And John Alvin also passed a few years back.
It is fantastic. Is it called I believe it's called the maquette? Is that what the dummy, the original?
This is a comp painting,
right? Yes. And it doesn't have credits on it. It's just the image.
It's just the art. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's I get it. And it's also the way you came about it makes it valuable. Like I have people that give me stuff, but like when it happens, when it's not something that when it happens fortuitously like that, it means more. I was at a neighborhood parking meeting. This is back a couple houses ago. I lived behind the Chateau Marmont, and we had this problem parking with people coming up from Sunset Boulevard. And we had this meeting, and this old guy there named Dan. People was talking to Dan, and I immediately recognized him from growing up reading Famous Monsters magazine. And I went up to him later and I went, "You're Dan Strepak." And he went, "Yeah, who ran the makeup department at 20th Century Fox. He's the guy that hired John Chambers." And I said, I know who you are. And I listed his credits. And like 3 days later, knock on my door, and he gave me a chimpanzee extras mask from Planet of the Apes, because you probably want this.
Yeah.
And as I'll never part with that because of how I didn't buy it at an auction. I just it found me.
Well, I think all 3 of us have had this experience where whether you write a book, or you put up a website, or you have a podcast, and you're waxing on enthusiastically about something and bearing your love for it on your sleeve, people who have something say, "Oh, that's a safe place to send this. He'll take good care of it and it will be appreciated," and so on. And they just send you stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John, you have Ruth Gordon's skull. Is that right? Or did I read that?
Well, they said it was her skull.
Other podcasts reach for the sky. Dana Gould Hour.
We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Tom Kenny speaking.
And then
I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out! Peace out! You want me? Peace